But yeah, man, one thing that I think is interesting with you is like you're doing the training yourself, right? So you have your online, you're working with people, but you actually do the stuff yourself, so you can really speak to the effects of the training
Mhm.
from personal experience. And so, yeah, like go into that a little bit, your personal experience with the training.
All right. Well, I'll say this. I've done a lot of different systems over the years. I got really I'll create a little context. I got really into strength and conditioning after I suffered like a really bad loss in MMA. I was an MMA competitor for a long time, and
Okay.
was recognizing that the more my first form of strength and conditioning, I was really into like the whole functional fitness sort of movement from like 2010 to 2018. With like the battle ropes, the maces, like the kettlebells. Like I was listening to Joe Rogan Experience, like I was popping alpha brain like crazy, swinging kettlebells like a motherfucker. And I noticed that when I was doing that, that my jujitsu was improving. Like I was getting better at like grappling, my wrestling was feeling better, my cardio was improving. And I was like, okay, this is a huge asset that I got to keep in my life. And I started exploring more types of strength and conditioning. And then I started getting into CrossFit. Then I started messing around with like wet method stuff. I started messing around with functional patterns, just trying to feel like, what could give me an edge for my next competition. And right around that time, I also came across, BJ Penn. He was doing this crazy training methodology, and he made a little documentary on it for his UFC fight against Kenny Florian. And I remember thinking like, wow, that shit looks fucking crazy. Like I got to learn that. So BJ Penn has his performance, and he was just, it just took him to another level. It's a noticeable difference. And so they kind of clicked. I was like, damn, dude, like this is like I need these kind of advantages for my fight. So, searched around for it, couldn't find it anywhere. I even quit my job. I made a career change just to find this training. And I got my National Academy of Sports Medicine. I was like, okay, it's a national certification. Like they're going to have this training in there. Like I'm going to come across it sooner or later. And so, I got the book. It took me three times to pass the fucking test, believe it or not. And
Oh
I
my
couldn't
gosh.
find this nervous system training anywhere. So you just stick to what you know. Like I was just doing SAQ and kettlebells and speed, the traditional stuff. And then got exposed to it again in 2015. And when I started doing the training, to answer your question, I had a real issue with my striking accuracy. It was a real struggle for me, and a lot of it I was just doing too much weight training with like bicep curls and shoulder extensions with dumbbells and stuff, and I didn't realize I was destroying my punching accuracy and precision. It was making my elastic system was getting too tight. And so when I stopped that and I started copying this nervous system training methodology, I started doing medicine ball throws and plyometric push-ups. And I found a company like Spry a long time ago was selling those hand weights, but they filled them with sand. And I bought a pair. And then I bought Nick Kirsten's what was it called? Applied Training ATP 1 through 3. He's got a 3 volume series, and I started doing the ball work methodology. And I remember I did that for like 2 days. I was just learning it, messing around. I was a personal trainer at the time, so I had a ton of time on my hands. And I remember when I went back into MMA, like after like doing it for 2 days, I felt a huge improvement in my boxing, like noticeable improvements. And even my buddies were saying, like, dude, what have you been doing? Who you been
In
working
two
with?
in just 2 days.
2 days. Yeah, I'll never forget it. Like it was like
Wow.
I was having nightmares about my striking because I got knocked out in a fight, and it was just like I could not solve this puzzle, and I had another fight coming, and I was just getting mad anxiety over it. And yeah, I went into boxing, just started fucking guys up. I could put my hands anywhere I wanted them, and that's when it all clicked. It all made sense, and I was like, holy shit! Like, how did I just become better at fighting by doing less fighting?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
it just blew my paradigm open. And then I just went deeper into the system, learning more about the ball work, the balance, trying to just incorporate this into my body. And every time, like, I would come back to the gym like every 2 weeks because, I was trying to work out like 2 different jobs and shit like that. I wasn't training as consistently. So every time I came back, I was better than my friends. My like, learning jujitsu was easier. Figuring out arm bars, figuring out sequences, learning techniques. I just became well. I raised my talent level essentially.
Right.
Now it was like hanging with the pros. I was hanging with the high-low amateurs. And out of all the training systems I've tried, I've never come across something to deliver such improvements at my sport. And
Right.
that's a key element that I always drive for other martial artists. It's like I think too many guys are trying to get good at training, but is your training actually making you better at your sport? Are
Mhm.
you so that's the lens that I push it through. And so after that, like, yeah, I haven't looked back, and I still try different systems. I still fuck around with other things. I still have yet to come across a training system to deliver the type of results to make you better at your goal fast enough and efficient enough.
Yeah,
It's unchallenged.
it's interesting to think about where some of these systems are going to go and what else is going to come out in the next, call it, 10 years. But like you said, it's hard to come across something that's as effective like as this. Like when we're talking about nervous system training though, like the three of us hear that and we have a good idea as to what that means and all the details in it, but just real quick at the beginning of the show for someone who may not understand what that means and what we're thinking about with the concept of nervous system training. Could you give an explanation to that?
Okay, yeah. So this is a very confusing thing for people, and I get tons of haters I get a lot of strength coaches in my DMs freaking writing me essays on how much they hate my training and how everything's the nervous system. It's like, okay, so the big issue that we got to really help people with is language, right? And how there's no in my opinion, there's no such thing as official terminology to anything. The only thing that makes terminology is the value that term gives. Like the word plyometrics. No one knows what the fuck that word means because it was made up by Dr. Yessis and a track coach. You know, and they're just like, plyometrics sounds good, movement, velocity. Okay, let's looks good. Now it's in every scientific sports book ever published, but it's just made up. And the only reason why it's a term now is because that term has value to it. So when we say
Mhm.
nervous system training, like everything trains the nervous system. Everything involves the nervous system. Like you can't isolate anything in a vacuum. It's all fused together. Fascial system, nervous system, skeletal system, they're inseparable. So when we say nervous system training, basically what we're trying to do is create a context of training modalities and a training philosophy that's going to trigger certain qualities that the nervous system provides, or certain mechanics that the nervous system really drives harder than just say the muscular system. So most weightlifting system hits the nervous system, but the primarily goal is to enhance muscular system mechanics. So when we do these
Right.
modalities, what we're trying to do is we're not just trying to hit the muscular system, we're trying to hit deeper layers of mechanics that are involved with more layers of tissue. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. And
And
like,
big
yeah,
thing
go
too
ahead,
is
Patrick.
that I realized with this training, like you were saying with your punching accuracy, you're training the nervous system to be able to in real time notice where you're hitting and notice what's going on in real time at a speed that the speed of sport.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you want it's and when you look at the training, if you really kind of just focus on what the body action has to do in the sport and the type of body actions in the training, when you focus on that more than the tools and the terminology, it really kind of starts making a lot more sense. If you kind of have like a more like open mind lens to it. But then trying to convince other people that where they associate, like I was talking about this with my podcast producer Jake, where he was showing me like Ben Patrick's knees over toes movement. And he's like, well, what about this? Like he's doing like deep lunges. Like Ben Patrick is known for his dunking ability. I'm like, listen, dorsiflexion lunges, like that's not that like just because someone is doing that movement, that doesn't equal that result. Like, because most people say, like, oh, knees over toes, deep lunges, this guy dunks, I'm going to dunk now. It's not really how it works. It's a lot more complicated than that. So when you kind of disassociate the movements and the terminology and just look at what the body is doing, the type of stimulation that's hitting the body, the type of speed qualities that are hitting the body, and then you look at the sport, they're very similar. So it's like, oh, okay, yeah, it makes sense. Like if we train to be more explosive, if my training looks more explosive like a fight, when I go fight, I'm going to be more explosive, right? Like Occam's razor, keep the simplest answer is the most logical answer.
Yeah, 100%. Coming up in martial arts, talk about that a little bit. And a lot of these gyms have these kind of local inside the gym training methods that they follow, which I'm sure you've experienced. And you're like, this is how we're gonna go about fight camp. What was that like coming up for you, and how far did you go with the martial arts?
With martial arts, so uh, okay, let me break this question. Let me break these answers into chunks. So, like, I got involved with martial arts since the '90s, actually, because my dad was doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu back in the '80s before the Gracies had their facility. He was going to seminars at El Camino Community College. Like the Gracies were looking for extra cash. They first moved to Redondo. My mom met like the Grandmaster. What was his name? Hegan, or I can't remember. Like Royce Gracie's father. And so my mom and dad were kind of hip to arm bars and triangle chokes and all that kind of stuff. And my dad used to show me these moves like on our living room floor, like playing around. And he used to buy like the old VHS tapes of UFC one, again, like when Ken Shamrock and Royce Gracie fought for like a half hour and no one won. So it's always been like a part of my like lexicon since like I was a little kid. And then as I got older, I got into sports really late. I was just really into martial arts stuff and like video games and all that kind of shit. I wasn't really into athletics. So I didn't get into sports like my junior year of high school. I got into sports relatively late. And by the time I was actually starting to get good and competent at sports, I already graduated high school. So I wanted another outlet to kind of feed this new love I've developed for athletics. And so that's how I got into MMA. Back in 2010, I first got involved in MMA. And back in those days, it was the Wild West, man. We didn't know shit. Like we were just throwing on tap out shorts, throwing battle ropes around, trying to like come up with like weird workouts and just doing the whole never back down system. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Climbing ropes and shit. You just doing fitness. Essentially, we were just doing fitness. And I remember when the TRX came out like that same year, and everyone was like, "This is gonna change everything." We're doing all this TRX movements, and yeah, that was kind of how it came about, how I got involved with MMA. And then over the years, training kind of like progressed in the MMA space. Then everyone was really big into like functional movements and CrossFit. And that's what I was really big into because it felt like it worked. It felt a little stronger. We didn't realize
Right.
that there's only like a 20 to 30% improvement on your athleticism before it plateaus with just fitness modalities. And so then as I started learning the nervous system training, this is where life gets difficult. When I started learning the nervous system training, seeing other fighters doing it, feeling the results myself, this is where things really got difficult in life because now I was trying to introduce a different style of training. So I tell my friends, like, guys, we need to do this differently. Like, I'm telling you, we need to start doing like this Russian shit that we got to start doing plyometrics. And I was met with a ton of resistance, a lot of resistance. My friends would say like I look gay on the balance pipes. Like why are you training your feet? Like what the fuck is that? Like no, you need to be training your biceps. Like it because they're still like in those meathead days. Trying to talk to a bunch of 19-year-old kids that want to be cage fighters. It's fucking disaster. And yeah, and then so eventually some of my buddies listened. Some of my
Yeah,
buddies
yeah,
listened
yeah.
and they went pro. The other ones that didn't, they kind of disappeared. Became nothing.
Right. Bro, that's so funny. The Never Back Down training protocol. That was a legendary movie, by the way.
Oh, the classic movie. Back when Amber Heard was like not crazy. Well, not as crazy.
Man, that
Well,
movie
at that point, we just didn't know. We just didn't know about it yet.
Yeah, yeah, she was out there. But yeah, Never Back Down, classic movie. Yeah, man. Legendary movie.
what other this is an interesting topic, but like cuz that's a movie for me that like definitely influenced my thought process when it comes to just I don't know, just life in general, right? Like I was young, like I wasn't fighting at that time, but I remember that movie having an impact on me. Are there any other like movies or cultural like influences that have an effect on the way you developed in the training world?
Man. So you guys gonna open the door to my weirdness. Yeah, I'd say a couple, like Friday Night Lights, this
Okay.
fucking
Okay.
classic football movie that really inspired me to get into like football my junior year. Watch that movie. Never Back Down was a big one. That kind of like, a lot of these kind of help you develop like an identity when you're young because you don't know who you are or what you want to become. So they kind of give you something to model and build an archetype with. Uh, I would say the most influential piece of media that's really helped how I think about training and the philosophy of training is actually this anime series called Shiguri Death Frenzy. It's probably the best. I don't know if you guys are into anime. I don't know if you're like nerds like that, but I was a gamer first and then I got into fighting later. But this anime is so in depth with how you should think about techniques and
Mm.
different approaches towards speed and your opponents. And it's pretty brutal. Like the samurai, they do not pull back punches. Like it is, it's feudal Japan. It's a pretty brutal time. Learning how to meditate, learning how to think about what you're doing, what your body is doing, what your muscles are doing, what the actions are, not necessarily what the modality is, but what are the actions happening underneath the skin, and how to think outside of the box. This series I always return to it to kind of help me rethink about things I'm labbing with and to get my mind into that place of, what is my nervous system telling me that I can't find in the textbooks? Because our bodies have all the answers we need. We don't need all these studies. Feedback on a regular basis on what's working, how it's affecting us, but not everyone has the ability to turn that into a language or know how to uh, decipher those neurological impulses. So this always kind
100%.
of keeps me in tune with my body and understanding.
And would you say that having experienced it yourself allows you to teach it way better?
Yeah, 100%. Feeling is understanding. I don't think you can fully understand something until you felt it, on a bunch of different levels. And in particular with training, I think it really helps. Now, do you need to be very good at the training to teach it back? Not necessarily. Uh, you know, uh, I wouldn't say necessarily you need to, because I think you need to understand how it works, what it feels like, but I don't think you need to be an incredible athlete, or to have years and years of good nervous system training in your own body to know how to teach it back. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just sort of helps with the language, right? Like like once you simplify it in yourself with the strategies, it comes out a little bit better for someone else.
Yeah, and it helps you reteach drills, and find new coaching points, find different ways to kind of like how to take something really complex and make it simple for the athlete because they don't want to know about neurological mechanisms and fascial hydration. They don't care, give a shit. They just want to get better, and they want to know how to do the drill now and if they're doing it right.
That's
So
funny.
let's go into a little bit of fascial hydration because that's something that both Brett and I try to focus on a lot is the movement of the fascia and how exactly to make ourselves better movers by thinking of the fascia and by using the lines of the fascia.
Okay, so this is gonna be some athletic red pills for you guys. So the fascial system, everyone it's like it's really interesting topic. There's a lot of talk about it. Now, I didn't start really understanding what the fascial system was until I started doing a bunch of phone calls with Dr. Edith. She co-authored Probot X with Marinovich. And she was telling me how, I used to think it's all about muscle and tendon elasticity, but she was trying to say, like, listen, you don't have any elasticity in those muscles and tendons without the elasticity into the fascia. It's the fascial system is what grants them the elasticity. And I'm like,
Mm.
oh, okay. Because I used to think fascial system was just like a spongy gelatin layer between that kind of encase things that help electricity travel from one muscle group to the other, especially looking at it from the myofascial line perspective. But if you really think about it and not, like I said, not worry about the language, not worry about what the textbooks are trying to tell you, but if you really think about what the body's doing under movement, technically anything is a myofascial line. Any movement is a line. There are no like this chain has to go from here into the hip and down. It doesn't have to, like, you don't have to do a movement that follows that line from a textbook, like anatomy trains or whatever. Because if you do a spinning back kick, that's not in any and fascial, anatomy trains imagery, right? But it's still working. It's a movement. It's an expression at speed and velocity and strength. It's a line. Anything is a line. Any form of movement is a line, you know, because it's moving, because it's working. Nothing's breaking on us, so it can do it. So you don't have to train things in these lines. These lines are just guidelines to give you an understanding of the global path of how fascia travels, or how the electricity can communicate down different pathways for efficiency. So when you see some of these training methodologies where they like for example, like they'll take like a weight and a cable and like they'll try to step forward and move like this and then like come back, like they're trying to follow these myofascial lines. You don't actually have to do that. You can do anything as long as you keep some key principles that stimulate fascial mechanics. So you got gliding principles, right? You can take your hand, you could squeeze it like this, and you could press it, right? And that's forcing a glide. Well, you got to pull your fingers back, and you got to squeeze your palm forward, and you'll feel a tightening go across your arm. It's kind of a weird thing you have to practice a little bit, like this, right? And if you squeeze that, right, and push these palms forward and push your knuckles back the other way, you'll kind of feel this weird sensation, right? That's a glide.
Yeah.
That you're forcing the tendons and ligaments to pull and contract, so these different layers, like superfascial layers of fascia, can start sliding and gliding, and that creates better efficiency of communication. Because with the fascial system is very multidimensional. Like it hits a lot of different things. It has a lot of different features to it. So you have gliding systems. Now does that mean you have to like glide like in the way of like the anatomy trains books where I have to go like this has to be extending, this has to be flexing, and I have to glide for it to work? Now, like you can do anything. Like the fascial doesn't care about myofascial lines. That's just a way for us to map it. So there's gliding principles to enhance communication, to improve efficiency, to start teaching the fascial system to redirect kinetic energy in those directions better. Because some fascial layers don't have a good glide, and you'll develop compensation. Like if you land and it's not gliding well between your calf, hamstring, and glute, the kinetic energy, your fascial system is going to know this, and it's going to encourage kinetic energy to be pushed and taken more into the anterior part of the leg. And that can create compensation. It's like, some people are more quad dominant. That's where that comes from. So gliding helps reteach mechanical loading, kinetic energy to go in different areas. And then you have the other principle you need, where you need rhythmic movements to rehydrate the fascial system. Any form of rhythmic movement, but it has to be low load and it has to be at a certain amount of time in certain areas for fascial hydration, because the fascial system needs kinetic energy to push fluid into it. It does not work. It does not hydrate on its own. You need kinetic energy to force the mechanism to take place. And so this is where the ball work training comes in, where you can do small, you can like glide your feet, on the towel crunch, like that's like a popular one going around right now. And then you just jump around for 20 seconds. That re-encourages the fascial system start distributing kinetic energy towards these new glided areas you just activated. Or you can do like straight legged kickbacks on the ball work methodology. It's a rhythmic kinetic movement, low load, doing it for about 20 to 30 seconds. That starts pushing fluid into these other fascial directions, these other myofascial lines. So there's a bunch of different ways to do it, but as long as you have a good glide principle, it's low load, low impact, and rhythmic. Like it has to be rhythmic, like boom, 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 over and over again. And you don't do it to the point where you start getting into neuromuscular endurance, where maybe you start doing it for like 2 to 3 minutes. That's more utilizing like the neuromuscular conditioning and fascial system conditioning. So there's different protocols depending on what your goal is to be. But yeah, that's essentially in a nutshell. You can do that with anything. Like you can literally take like a 1 pound dumbbell, and just do this for 20 seconds, and you just rehydrate the fascial system, in your arm. That's it. It's not as complicated as people think. People try to make it like super complicated and come up with all these complex movements, right? And they see them like dancing around with like, they're throwing kettlebells behind them. It's not necessary. It's not actually how you really get the mechanisms to start helping you express better sports movement.
It's interesting because Andrew, you were just hitting that move very similar with with what you sent me before the podcast. So you could talk about your
Yeah,
exercise that you were doing today.
yeah. So I'll send you I'll send you a message right now, Quentin, so you can see what I was doing.
Okay.
Um, but basically, I was jumping up, like hopping up on my toes, and I had the weights, and I was kind of doing a trap three raise, but imagining that I'm throwing a ball. So like in my mind, I'm imagining that I'm throwing a ball, and I'm throwing it up, catching it, like absorbing the impact, and then throwing myself down, catching up, throwing down. And let's see if we could put it up on the screen. Here we go. I just sent it over to you. But yeah, essentially just that's my understanding of the fascial system and the fascial hydration was similar to what you were talking about, in that if we have this rhythmic movement, the fascia learns how to communicate with itself in real time, and then
Mhm.
it doesn't become this slow movement, because slow movement is good for teaching position, but it doesn't teach you how to move in real life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also, well, hold on real quick. This is what you're sending me. What platform are you sending it to?
Oh, I sent it on Instagram.
Instagram? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to load that up because my Instagram is not loading on my iPad right now.
Sure.
It's just one example. I mean, but like you said, there's like
Yeah.
it was I brought it up because it was similar to the exercise you were talking about where you were going out to the side and it was the timing and it was uh the glide the kind of bounce. I like to call it like the bounce. And yeah, it was just cool
Sure.
because we were just talking about a similar exercise beforehand, but Andrew's always posting some crazy stuff on Instagram.
Well, yeah, but
Yes.
and technically, like I'm trying to push more into like that series of, I got like different forms of ball work, that's lower loaded, where the hand weights have like a half pound, different movements because there are benefits I call them global movements. Like there's so much terminology that's not out there yet. I'm trying to invent some terminology to help people. Where like say like have you guys familiar with the ball work? Have you tried incorporating that into your training system yet? Okay,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
like with the
Yes.
crossovers, right, on the stability ball where you're taking your hand weights, you're crossing over. Like this is a big movement that does follow a myofascial line that's mapped out on anatomy trains. Now, you don't always have to follow these big, I call them global movements, but it does help to follow large global movements because you do hit more layers of stimulus and more layers of the tissue.
Hmm.
Yeah, well, and I think one of the things you're talking about is just understanding the principle and then being creative with it, right? And that's something that this system really allows you to do is kind of tap into some creativity. And really, with any system, like once you understand the principle of the training, then the methods are up to you to create, apply, and kind of use as you see fit.
Yeah, yeah. I try to tell like, and like, hey, if you can get a stimulus out of it, any movement is a modality. There is no right or wrong. There's just modalities that have maybe more effect, maybe a little less effect. And I'm trying to help people stop seeing this as like, oh, he's doing this wrong, he's not doing this right. It's like that doesn't make any sense. Because like let's say if you look at like the weightlifting system, because right now there's like a war in training, with all these different systems where some people are saying like, oh well, you're doing this certain Russian move, you're doing it wrong because you use the stability ball. It's like, well, how could you say it's wrong if it stimulates me? Maybe there's some cons to it. Maybe there's some trade-offs where yeah, I'm adding a stability ball. It's going to create more neurological drive, more elasticity, but I may lose on some elements of raw power. But I have a different goal. I want more elasticity on my posterior chain. I don't want more raw power. So you can't. Nothing is right or wrong. There's just differences. And that's what's killing athletes right now when they're going through all these different training systems trying to figure out, oh, do I need to do this? Like, I get messages all the time from guys doing ball work like, hey, what am I doing wrong? Like, you're not doing anything wrong. There's just some areas where you could do it different to get a different result out of it, more stimulating results. But we are bilateral thinkers by nature. We have two hemispheres in our brain, and we usually go off of like a red or blue, a right or wrong. you know
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that's interesting is like the Marinovich type training. It can be used for developing elite athletes, but also when you've kind of broadened your studies to like what we're talking about with the fascial system and with like structural integration and whatnot, like these training principles, like ball work in specific, or just the concept, the principle of elasticity is really helpful for just general wellness, which I know you're working with some individuals like that. And it's like they can get a lot of great value, probably more valuable than the traditional stuff if they would incorporate some of these principles into the training.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of my clients aren't even martial artists or don't have a performance goal. A lot of them just want to feel and move better,
Right.
and it's like, we get one testimony after another. It's like clockwork, where their back pain is going away, their shoulder issues are going away, their foot pain is going away, their knees, they can now jump. They can do
Mhm.
all these things because we're just addressing more parts of the human body than what the traditional system understands. You know, and so I don't want to say like the traditional system is wrong or like the current fitness model is wrong. It's just different. It
Yeah.
emphasizes more on strength, but with that comes some trade-offs. You're going to get more compression. You're going to get less elasticity, less mobility, but you will get stronger. I would say if you lift weights, you'll probably get stronger at, slow twitch than doing the nervous system training. So I've had some guys say like, hey, can I still do my weightlifting or is it going to ruin this? I'm like, no, it's not going to ruin nothing gets ruined. Like, you're just going to have some trade-offs. Like, you want to do some weightlifting, it's cool, but you'll start feeling tighter. You may be a little slower in your jiu-jitsu and it could start compromising, certain biomechanics. It might not feel the best. So just it's choices. You just make a choice what you want to do with your body depending on your goal. Because I'll do some weightlifting, like I'll do some bodybuilding. I'll fuck around to get a little hypertrophy in the old chest. Trying to get my muscles up a little. Like I don't, but I understand the trade-off. I'm like, okay, I'm going to sacrifice a little elasticity in my chest. I'll double down on some ball work later, kind of get it back. But right now, I want to I want a little bit of hypertrophy on certain muscle groups because it's summertime. So there's nothing wrong with types of training. It's just choices you want to make with your body.
Yeah. I mean,
100%. I would say one thing too that's it's pretty interesting is it's all context dependent, and it's like there's when you look at the right or the wrong, it's like what you're looking for. Like Brett is saying, in Brett's gym he trains his general population like this, and his general population people, and it works so well. And I would say it works better on somebody who's not athletic because they're not experiencing these things on a regular basis. Like an athlete is constantly feeling that elasticity, constantly feeling the bouncy effect because that's just how they live. But a general population person who most people just don't have really good athletic qualities. This builds it up out of them, and it makes them start having fun with moving, be able to start walking in and feeling a pep in their step, like feeling like their foot is bouncing on the floor, like stuff like that. It's truly incredible.
Yeah. Well, it does the muscular equilibrium effect that this training really has is really good for, well, one, it's really good for the hormonal system. When you
Mm.
start reducing compensation, start redeveloping better elasticity, better fascial hydration out of the body, it puts less stress on the endocrine system and central nervous system. And hormones flow better, cortisol goes down, adrenal fatigue wears off, your feet are moving better, they're stronger, so there's less compensation points like in your overall movement, and it kind of gives you that like younger feeling. You feel like you're lighter now, and that's why I do subscribe more to these modalities, just because the the effects that it delivers, the clients and the athletes seem to be more responsive. I can have I can get them closer to how they want to feel with this form of methodology than other forms of methodology, or let's say other types of modalities have these with these different principles.
One thing that's very interesting, and I don't have the answer to this yet. Maybe you have looked into it. So after we did our episode with Brian, I had someone come up to me and they said, now put some context, right? Like some of the things we're talking about with like the ball work and some of the different exercises, we're doing it at a rate of speed that is not, it doesn't, like you're not talking about necessarily going at maximum 100% speed for some of these guys, like you said earlier, 30 seconds. You know what I mean? So we're talking about kind of a wellness in a way there. But let's talk about fight or flight mode, where we're talking about do or die type of speed. I had somebody ask me, if we're getting into this fight or flight mode all of the time, do we have any assessments on the brain specifically for contact athletes like fighters, football players, and could this type of fight or flight training have any adverse effects on the brain?
Like negative side effects, like
Yeah.
um sure. I think, but I think it really depends on, I think it depends on the person and the person's emotional state that goes into the training, not the movement itself, you know, because you look at a track and field athlete, like they're hitting their fight or flight, activation constantly, especially the flight part, you know, and a lot of them live pretty normal, sustainable lives, you know. But if you take someone who maybe is trying, who has a huge like a motivational drive, or I call it an emotional drive, if their emotional drive maybe is wrapped around a place of trauma, you know, or it's wrapped from a place of overly abundant stress, the emotional instability. You know, one of these architectural scaffoldings that kind of hold like their emotional state on why they are doing this. You know, and then you apply a training expression into that emotional state that I would say over time, yeah, it could have a negative effect, but I don't think it's the movement or pushing the body into that state that has a negative effect. I think it's the emotional context that the athlete is holding deep down inside that it reinforces that expression to maybe come out in a violent way, you know, in everyday life. And then you start hitting the realms of mental illness, where a certain behavior becomes has such negative side effects where it actually starts conflicting with your quality of life. That's technically what defines a mental illness, you know. So it's all about behavioral management, and this is something I know deeply about just from my years of doing different forms of therapy, because I had a huge anger issue, I had a huge like aggression problem. So I can kind of speak into this. When I used to do my ball work, I would put in a ton of fucking intensity into it. Like I'd get like I was an angry like fighter. Like I trained with intensity, and I was like Mike Tyson. You know, I want your heart. I want to fucking eat it. I was like that guy. And it wasn't until I really started noticing that this behavior was not sustainable, because then you lose relationships. You're hard to get along with. You're always running hot. You're always angry. And the training can help reinforce that neurological pathway, you know, because yeah, I've met a lot of fighters who are super chill that have done the training. You know, there's a lot of guys in jujitsu that are super chill guys, and half the time they're super high. And
I
they're
was just
talking.
about to say they might just be stoned. Them jiu-jitsu
Yeah,
guys are
they,
known to
but
just be blitzed.
yeah, you know, so I think it really comes down to how the person is regulating their own behavior, you know, because we all are capable of you know, intensity, and that intensity is can always come out in behavior where the expression works against us, you know, as far as like our mental health.
Yeah, and just another one on that is specifically we were looking at the Twitch training for an epileptic individual and wondering if there could be an adverse effect with something like that. Because we were seeing that like the person was telling me that if this person who I guess has epilepsy sees the training, like watches like a video of Twitch training or sees it in person, that could stimulate or create like a seizure for that individual. And so I was wondering, what about like actually doing it? Like, is could there be any adverse effects with the brain? And really, like, this is a big question. Like, I'm sure maybe like a deep neuroscientist could answer the question, but you know, just something that was on my brain and see what you have to say about it.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Uh,
Yeah,
it,
it's a tough question. I didn't know the answer. Like they asked me, I was like, I was
I
like,
feel
I'll
like it would
ask.
teach the body how to react during a seizure, right? I mean, obviously, I don't know, but to me, like thinking about it, it's like, wait a second, what if you're conditioning the brain like how to relax during that?
Well, I do know a seizure is a is it's a signal failure between God. I'm trying to keep as much bro science out of this as possible because I'm not a doctor. But something about a seizure, it's like the cognitive function of the brain and the nervous system gets disconnected, and the brain and the nervous system is trying to like rehijack the brain. I think that's what's going on. I haven't researched this enough.
Uh, I'm
I
looking it
don't.
up.
If you were to do the fast switch training, someone who's epileptic, honestly, I don't think it would trigger anything. You know, like I think absolutely because I do know like flashing lights and things that are very visually stimulating could do this, but
But that's what the person was saying. Like if you were to watch a video or see in person someone doing the Twitch training, it would spark it. But I was just wondering about doing it, like doing it yourself,
doing it.
if it would have an adverse effect or a positive effect. But again, it's a really tough question to answer that I don't know the answer to. So
I don't know. I imagine I would guess that it would have lean into more, and I'm just guessing it would lean more into positive effects because I think you can't go wrong with eustress. You know, you can go wrong with de-stress, but any form of
Mhm.
eustress, any form of stress that promotes cellular regeneration and adaptivity, I think is going to have more benefit than not. That's I would say it's a far out question though. I'd like to run an experiment on it.
yeah, that's what yeah, I know. And that's
I will
what me
say
and
with the
Andrew,
Twitch,
what'd you say, Andrew?
yeah, I will say with the Twitch training, honestly, like it's there hasn't been a quicker way to get rid of any tightness in the body or just wake yourself up. Or I've been um I've been using it at the end of my workout. So I'm a swimmer, and what I'll do is when I'm cooling down, when I'm cooling down from my practice, I usually do around a thousand swim easy, and between each 100 meters, I'll do a round of Twitch training and then get back into another 100 meters and get back on the pool deck, do some Twitch training, do a little bit of pool work where I'll do some internal external rotations with the leg. I'll do some high knees, move the knees side to side. And the pool work has been incredible for increasing my recovery.
Oh yeah, yeah.
The pool and the Twitch.
Yeah, pool work. People are sleeping on the pool work, man. Pool work. Honestly, I think out of all the training modalities that Marv, Dr. Edith, and all these, you know, Dr. Yessis, all these brilliant minds, man, the pool work I think is by far the secret sauce out of the whole program. Nothing's like the pool work. Nothing delivers results, heals the body. It's such a cheat code.
100%. 100%. And I will say it's helping my strength a lot because I've always had a lot of strength. Brett is someone who has an insane strength, truly. I've had pretty good strength, and you know, like there's a difference between having strength and having like that poppiness. And with the pool strength, I mean with the pool work, I'm feeling stronger. Maybe if I'm not categorically stronger, like with the weights, I'm feeling a lot stronger in terms of like the way I'm hitting the floor. I'm feeling like I could keep my ankle up without much without keep my heel up without much effort. And I'm feeling things in the body, and I'm feeling more like I have this explosivity in me.
Yeah. Well, you're rewiring your spine on a certain. Well, one, you're becoming more fast twitch dominant. You know, so we all have a
Mhm.
fast twitch, slow twitch ratio, like genetically. Some people have it higher than others. And if you're not working on the neurological circuitry to activate those, then they become a little bit more dormant, or they become more secondary. So when you're doing the pool train, when you're doing all these, like three things, I think I would say like three things are really what you're feeling right now. One, you're mitigating weakness out of the body. You're hitting all these different forms, the internal, external rotation, the leg abduction, adduction. You're hitting all these secondaries and primaries in a way that's more globally, you know, like these bigger movements. It helps mitigate weakness out of the body. And so now when you go into like say your martial arts training or your sports movements, now your body is working as like one efficient unit instead of like these fragmented parts, or the amount of compensations, like let's say you may have like maybe you had a weakness in your calf and hamstring on one leg. That's going to really force your other leg, your oblique system, your shoulder system on the opposite side to work double to try to put the same amount of force output in there. But now that it has that extra help, all of a sudden, this double leg feels easy now, just because like a couple of these other like weak points are now gone. You have less compensation, you have more, and neurological drive, how much electricity you can push into your body, because that's really what strength is at the end of the day. All strength is electricity. So the more you can condition your nervous system, your spine, to pump that electricity into your body, creating more neurological drive, then all of a sudden, now you really understand strength. And I figured this out when I was reading through these old Russian manuals a long time ago, where they're doing this crazy experiment. Like, those, they put like these electrical sensors like on one of their bench pressers,
Yeah.
right? And like when it hits you, like your muscles will like contract, right? Because that's what our muscles respond to. That's what our spine is doing to us. And so they cranked that shit like all the way up on this poor Russian guy, and he was working on his bench press, and they cranked that shit all the way up, and they hit it, and he fucking threw the weight off of him.
What? That's crazy. I've read about stuff like that.
Yeah.
Interesting though.
And so that's when it hit me. I'm like, oh, this is what's happening. Like we're just increasing the amount of voltage where we can push through our body.
So this is very interesting, because this is something that I've read about this a bit, but I want to hear what you have to say about it with your studies. But Andrew mentioned that, I don't often like talk highly of myself, but I'm pretty strong. I'm a pretty strong dude. And I was following like before I got into this, I was like full Louis Simmons. I mean, talking about, I read every Louis Simmons book there ever was. I was full science and practice of strength training, like, but I was doing it in a way where, because I've been in martial arts, I was doing it in a way with methodologies that I thought would be better for performance. I come to find out later, I was just basically doing what I call unconventional powerlifting. But the point is, the point is that ever since I've stopped training the way I used to train, I haven't lost any strength. I can still pick up the same weights, even heavier. I've actually hit PRs because I'll still incorporate some absolute strength. And I've actually hit PRs on exercises. I've hit numbers that I wasn't able to hit when all I was training was the powerlifting split. And so I would like to hear you talk about that. Like, how much strength can you retain or actually gain by doing more of like the neurological, putting more of a focus on the neurological connections and firings that's happening with this training that we're doing?
Oh, I would say like you probably gain. Oh, okay, so in my experience, there have been a couple instances where what you're talking about, yes, like a big compounded movements, and usually it's more noticeable in compounded movements, not isolated movements, because those require a long series of different muscle chains and secondaries and primaries. It's a lot of layers of tissue that are involved with that. And like I was talking about before, like let's say if you were doing like your trap bar, your deadlift or something like that, maybe there was like a weakness going on in your feet or in your calf or in the hamstring, or maybe something going on in your oblique that feeds into your lower back that could be zapping your strength, making you weaker without realizing it. And when you now that you have that more balanced out, you have like a better natural strength about you, because now your nervous system is more connected with all the different muscle chains, and the weakness is now getting mitigated. You have better motor unit recruitment. You can recruit all the secondaries and all the primaries in a more synergistic fashion. Yeah, what you're improving is your efficiency of strength. So efficiency could help you pump out more PRs than just brute force compensation.
Right.
And another athlete I just started working with was one NFL player. It's like a defensive tackle for the Panthers. I started working with him, and he got a PR on his bench, just after doing this for a week, just the ball work, because it fixed his shoulder blade. One of his shoulders were dropping, and his scapula wasn't working properly. And so when he would do his bench, like, it created, the stratus, the scap would like fall, the stratus isn't firing properly. Now the pectoral minor has to work double, the upper trap has to work extra hard, and that limits your overall strength because the mechanical efficiency is now kind of crumbling. But now that we're like repairing his shoulder blade, it can slide better. The rhomboids are working better. His bench press PR went up. So that's really the magic that's happening is fixing these weaknesses. That's what we kind of address with the athletic assessment to get a much more in-depth understanding of the body. Now, with him, we can't do an athletic assessment because he's online. So the ball work training, even if you don't understand the athletic assessment process, doing the ball work and balance, doing the protocol, you will detect, oh shit, like I'm freaking dying on these kickbacks. But the pendulum swings are not so bad. But whenever I do these like rotational kickbacks, I can't get this shit. I'm dying. Like it will reveal where you have serious dysfunction going on in your body. And I've experienced something similar. Now, on the flip side of that coin, I was working with this athlete doing the nervous system training for a while, then he stopped because of COVID. He went back to weightlifting because he didn't know what else to do. And I started working with him again. And when we were doing our isometrics, his isometric strength felt significantly higher, but it was more in just primary movements, not compounded movements. Like holding like the bench press hold on the super cat. Like I remember he was doing 45 and I put my weight on it. He did a bunch of like weightlifting for like a couple months, came back. Now I had to put a 45 at 25 and I was standing on it and he was holding it with much more strength. But his boxing smoothness, and his rhythm and his fluidity, all that kind of like fell apart. So he made a trade-off.
So
Yeah.
quick question here, because this is something that I think about often. Um, for the plyometric training for the Marinovich system, is there a prerequisite level of strength that is necessary to be very good at it? Or can you develop it through the system?
Let's say for like it depends on the plyometric movement. Like you want to push an athlete to a general preparation phase, and like the athletic assessment is really good with that. If you don't know the assessment, like doing like a visual biomechanical test, like what is their squat looking like? Do their feet pronate? Is their knee valgus? When they do a push-up, does their serratus collapse and they kind of do this sort of thing, right? Can they not maintain a frame in the lower core? Where their lower back starts to really arch and their lower core kind of collapses. Now, when you have these dysfunctions in there, you could put them into plyometrics. Now, will the plyometrics on them own correct it? No, I think you need much more in-depth modalities. And it could vary depending on what's going on with the athlete and where they're at in their season. So it will help improve what they already got. But to, make drastic improvement in the biomechanics, like fixing the shoulder blades, fixing the serratus, fixing the lower abdominal cavity, you need much more in-depth things. The plyometrics alone won't do it. It can actually start to work again. It'll put a cap on your capacity because these deficiencies in biomechanics will overshear certain joints. Whether it's the meniscus, the Achilles tendon, the lower back, if the glutes aren't supporting it well, things like that.
Um,
That makes
let's talk.
sense.
Let's talk about two questions just sparked off of that answer, but we'll start with the first one here. I'm always very interested in different coaches' assessment protocols. And so let's talk about some of yours. You mentioned your athletic assessment for your in-person people when you get to actually feel them and see the in-person. Talk about some of the things you look for and the variety of assessments that you'll perform.
Okay, so we'll test everything. Like so, my version of athletic assessment might be different from Brian's because Brian has a more updated version of the protocol. Working with Gary. Now, I never met Marv and Gary. Never had the honor of meeting them or working with them. It's just never been able to get a hold of them. And Marv, passed away a couple years ago. But I learned my athletic assessment through Nick Kirsten at Speed of Sport. He's big into training. He was big into training MMA fighters, back in 2017. And so we would do things kind of very similar to how a physical therapist would evaluate things, manual muscle pressure, certain things like hold your arm out, push it down. Is it strong here? Is it strong here? So we'll test all these different areas, doing the big toe, the hamstring, internal, external rotation, lower core, upper core, looking at what the shoulder blades are looking like, shoulder flexion, measuring shoulder flexion, shoulder extension. And there's a couple of things that we're looking for. One, when we do like test it, like say if we're doing leg abduction, we put like their hands on their feet. And when I tell them they're supposed to abduct their legs as hard as they can in a seated position, right? So they explode the legs open. And I'm going to resist it with my hands. And based on what I feel, now here's the hard part is depending on the coach, like as good as the system is, if you don't have a good coach, that really understands what he's feeling. The system only gets you so far. So what I'm feeling is I'm feeling for the speed of the movement, the neurological drive of the movement, and the strength. How long they can keep pushing it. So the speed of the movement is how they can go from here and explode out. Because you'll have some athletes where they really explode out, but then when I'm like resisting it, like it kind of collapses, like all the strength disappears. So
Talk about what you mean by you're feeling for the neural. What did you say?
neurological drive.
Yeah. Talk about that.
So neurological drive is basically like, say, like you push something into the wall, and how far can you keep pushing it until like you eventually give up on it. So that's like how far your nervous system is trying to drive force into something. Like an overcoming isometric in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And then yeah, that's good stuff. And then my other question that sparked was oh my goodness, what was my other question? Oh, your GPP phase. So when we're talking about a GPP phase before getting into some of this plyometric training, what does that look like for these individuals? We were talking about putting on a base level of strength.
Yeah, so you figure out where they're at. Now, do you want this for like the in-person protocol or the online protocol?
Just whatever, however you see fit. Yeah, however you see fit.
Okay, we'll go in person because that's probably going to deliver more value. It's like the people watching. So the in person, we do the athletic assessment, and we each area is scored, and then from those scores, I'm going to design a training program because I want to address the weak areas first. That's how you're going to get the athlete to improve the fastest. That's how you get this like the 72-hour improvements. Instead of it taking like 2 to 3 weeks. So whether it's like, their hamstrings aren't working very well, the lower abdominal cavity, and then I'll sequence in more modalities from the system that are going to attack those areas. Now, usually if they're scoring pretty average, maybe they only got one red flag, like one hamstring's not working good, that's a 1, and the other one was like a 3, then I'll have a looser approach where I basically want to like fix their feet, get their foot strength up to par. So I'm hitting them with the balance board, I'm hitting with the balance pipes, slant board. I'm really attacking their feet for like 15 to 20 minutes out of the session. Towel crunches, trying to get all that really good. And then I'm hitting them with a lot of ball work training. Like a lot of it. Like we'll spend an hour and they're just working the ball work to death. And I don't let them because I want that looking crispy. I want it looking tight and fast, and I also want them to start memorizing these movements to start making the future training sessions more efficient. So they know what kickbacks are, they know oblique twists, they know pendulum swings, right? So I'm trying to create some exponential developments, instead of just hitting them like with the good shit right off the bat.
Yeah.
And then I'm also watching them as they're doing the ball work. I know what to look for in an athlete to figure out where the deficiencies are. Are they stuck in dorsiflexion? Do their feet get really tight when they're doing the ball work? Can they go into extension and really roll their feet across the ball really well? Like, where's the coordination to their foot and ankle complex? What's the speed of the movement? Is anything looking blurry, or can I actually see in the amerration phase, the exchange between a movement and then going back? If I can actually see it like a freeze frame for a split second, I know they're not moving at the neuromuscular efficiency I need them yet. I want to see all these qualities, and it takes time. It takes some time working with a lot of athletes to really get a good understanding of what the spectrum is of good soft quality movements. And then if there's a movement in the ball work that they're just sweating their ass off, like the adductor grabs, those always fuck people up. Where you're twisting, catching the ball in between your legs, you're twisting out, like working the psoas and adductor, that always fucks people up. So I'm like, all right, man, 10 minutes, just work it, re-strengthen the body, redevelop the neuromuscular control, get this weakness out of the body. And yeah, that's usually how it's looking like in the GPP phase. And then every once in a while, like a week will go by, we'll retest it. If I'm feeling a difference, like, okay, we're on the right track. Now we can kind of expand upon this. Now we can start doing maybe some banded work on some of these movements, some overspeed movements. We can start working in some low-level plyometrics, something that's safe, where we're hitting that adductor with some eccentric overload, trying to get that stretch shortening cycle to activate. And it's a constant progress. It's like a plant. You got to take care of it. You got to clip it. You got to water it. You got to test it, see where it's at. But that's usually the direction I'll take for the general preparation phase.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes total sense. Um, Another thing that I'm very interested in, and I love asking different speed coaches about this, is we see it with fighters. but there's other athletes that we see this we see this energy system where it needs to be developed, and that's the lactic zone. So if we're looking at energy systems like lactic power, lactic capacity, we see this energy system being used in a fight. But I know some individuals aren't a fan of incorporating lactic power, lactic capacity training on purpose, getting the athlete into that zone during the training. Where do you stand on that? Do you use it? Are you running some lactic work on purpose?
For a fighter, if I was working with a fighter,
Yeah.
fuck yeah. Are you kidding me? Like that's everything. That's everything. Listen, if you're a fighter and you don't like doing your conditioning, your alactic, lactic resistance, all that shit, you're a pussy. I'm gonna say it right now, and you're gonna lose. And guess what? You could lose in a way where you fucking die because people die in this sport. This is no fucking joke. Like, so I am really hard. I have no mercy on fighters' emotions, zero, because they're doing something. Now, if you're a basketball player, right? Okay, you lose the game, you'll be okay. Worst case scenario, you're gonna get some jumpers knee, right? You're gonna get your feelings hurt. But in cage fighting, I take cage fighting super seriously because, well, for one, it's my responsibility to deliver results, and it's my responsibility to stack the odds in your favor to win. And if you don't win, not only does that hurt you physically, that also hurts your gym's reputation, that hurts your reputation, and that hurts my reputation. So we all come to agreement that we're going to do everything we can to create a good performance. Even if we don't win, if we have a great performance, that's still a huge win for everyone. And you can walk away from the loss feeling proud of yourself. That's really important. That keeps the depression away because losing a fight is really hard on serotonin. It's really, really hard. It's a lot of evolutionary mechanisms you got to fight against to get back out and go compete again. But you said, like, what's my approach when it comes to that? Correct?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go into that. I mean, I was just
All
yeah,
right.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'll give you guys some sauce. So when it comes to developing cardio, first you need to get a heart rate monitor. And you got to strap it onto your fighter, and you got to have them run through sparring. This is what Marinovich did with BJ. Where you do your mitt work, do your boxing, do your wrestling, do all these different things, and you got to look at the monitor and see what is taxing their system the most. What part of the sport is their energy system not being able to push to like their heart rate capacity to the very limit, and they also are struggling to get their heart rate back down to like zone 3 or zone 2. So you have to see that because everyone's energy systems are a little different. And you also run them through a cardio test. Run them through the Cooper's test, a 12-minute run. 12 minutes, go around a track, try to cover as much ground as possible. At the end of it, track the heart rate, see where that's at. Track the distance. Go on Cooper's calculator website. There's hundreds of websites. Put that in. They'll get all their different zones. Right? You have a map on what's working, and they'll give you an idea of which energy system isn't very efficient. It's also the 10-minute row test. Now, the 10-minute row machine test is the most effective test to understanding more layers. One, where their kinetic weak points are. Because weaknesses in the body, when you do cardio training, like when you do sprints, if your lower back is not working properly, you're going to feel it. If your traps are not working properly, if you got bicep tendonitis, that shit is going to show up, in your energy system training. So it's really good to figure this out. It gives you, like, I call it like a receipt. It gives you a receipt on where your body's at. And so you run them through the 10-minute row machine test. And the goal is, with good row machine posture, you want to score 180 calories in 10 minutes. And you got to work, you're blasting yourself for 10 minutes, going balls to the fucking wall as hard as you can, get as many calories burnt in this 10 minutes. And you're also going to figure out where your mental stamina is. And this is really important. And this is like a good filtering process if I really want to work with a fighter or not, because fighters are not the easiest of clients. So I want to see, like, okay, are you going to break? Are you going to get mad at me? Are you going to get mad at the test? Are you going to fall apart? Are you going to become more aggressive the harder it gets? These are the things that you want to figure out. And the athlete needs to know where their limits are. Cardio makes cowards of us all. If your cardio fails, everything will fall apart. Like, that's what you can go. What's the phrase? You can go without water for 14 days, food without 30, air for only about 3 minutes. You need air. Like, it's always going to be number one priority. So when you run them through this test, I want to see what their posture is looking like. What are they feeling? How are they handling it? And then figure out what their calories are at, what they scored, also what their heart was doing. You know, because when you're doing something like that, your body is going to cycle between like the Krebs cycle is going to kick in. You know, you're going to have like these anaerobic moments, and then the aerobic system is going to take over, and you got to build up your ATP, and then your ATP is ready. You can kind of push it up again. You know, so you'll see these ebbs and flows on the heart rate monitor. I want to see how many peaks and valleys this guy can make. You know, if he's making a lot of spikes in this test, like he's replenished himself well, but okay, you know, this is looking pretty good. Maybe we just need to push what he's got even further and protocol it more specifically. You know, have it going like 5 minute rounds with 60 seconds rest. You know, or certain sprint training protocols. But yeah, that's how I would figure it out from there.
If we're looking at and this is a basically pretty simple question, but just for the audience listening, if we're looking at a 3 minute round, 1 minute rest, your typical amateur fight, what kind of heart rate zones are we looking to be able to spike to, and what heart rate zones are we looking to be able to recover to in 1 minute rest?
1 minute rest. You want to get from a zone 4, which is like your maximum heart rate. You know, maybe it just peaks barely into zone 4. You want to get back into zone 3 or 2 within 30 seconds. You know, and here's some sauce. You guys want a tip? There's a direct correlation. I was doing this when I was experimenting on myself. There's a direct correlation with your exhales and your heart rate going down. So when you inhale, you send a signal to your body to contract. The heart rate goes up, blood circulates into the lungs. When you exhale, it sends a signal to go out into the body. It promotes relaxation. And when I was messing with my heart rate monitor, because I was really big into like the Wim Hof method, I was noticing every time I breathe out, my heart rate, my beats per minute go like down, like 3 notches. I'd breathe in, it would go up 1 notch. Breathe out, it would go down another 3. And then I would hold my breath, it would kind of stay the same, and then it'd start to rise. And so after, let's say, a fight, you know, you fight your ass off 3 minutes, bell rings, you go to your bench. Your first 30 seconds, you want to dedicate to large inhales and then real slow on the exhale. Like, and I'm really over exaggerating that exhale because I'm trying to get my beats per minute down. And I tested this before. I work with my fighters on recovery is a strategy. So the first 30 seconds, I tell the coaches, you don't say nothing to them. No instructions, no anything. The first 30 seconds is just focusing on getting the nervous system to deload, getting the heart rate down, getting the exhales to go in. You know, and if you can get your heart rate from like 190, if you can get it back to 130s, you're looking good. And you're feeling good. Now your nervous system is calming down, the circulatory system is more balanced, more sustainable. And now the blood to the brain can start flowing more productively. It's not like surging through the brain with all this cortisol and adrenaline. That's why when you're really exhausted, you can't like think about anything, like, you know, like it's too much. It's sensory overload. So you need to get the nervous system to deload, get back into like a more parasympathetic tone, get the heart rate down. Once we can get it down to like that zone 3, zone 2, then you give the fighter instructions, what they need to work on, how this is going well. Because now they can hear it. They can start to take in the information because the brain has a little time, has some oxygen to start functioning again.
Are you a fan of energy system periodization, or are you more of an egregious approach where we're hitting all of the different energy systems at once, where we're talking about, you know, those 6 to 15 second alactic, you know, zones? We're talking about alactic power, then capacity, then lactic power, then capacity. Do you periodize those, or are you a fan of kind of working them all together throughout camp?
Depends on the athlete. I don't think there's one way to do it. It can vary depending on what's going on with the athlete's biology. You know, because you may have guys who are very aerobic, like Nick Diaz is a very high VO2 aerobic fighter. He can't get going until he's get plenty of O2 into his system. He's a second, third round guy. But if you look at someone usually, I'm trying to think like Uriah Hall, you know, he's a first round guy. You know, and a lot of this could be genetic. Sometimes you don't always want to try to push a certain fighter outside of their genetic boundaries because they have different muscle tissue, they have different fiber types, you know, they have different muscle bellies, you know, so sometimes you may not get huge results if you're working with a guy who starts strong in the first round, but he fades in the second, third round. You know, generally speaking, you're going to want to push more on the aerobic side of the training. You want to get that aerobic capacity, that VO2 capacity to really increase So their first two energy systems can replenish better. They have a replenishment issue. But say if they're like a second and third round kind of fighter, their first rounds always suck, like Forrest Griffin. It's their ATP and anaerobic system that's not very well developed. So we need to push more into those phases on a regular basis. And depending on the training schedule, how much time you have with this guy. Do you have 2 hour sessions 3 times a week? Do you have 1 hour session 5 times a week? Can you only work with them twice for an hour and a half? That these are other variables that a lot of trainers and textbooks don't ever address.
Yeah.
What do I do with my business model? Because this fighter can't afford me 4 times a week, so I only get him twice a week. So that's why when you assess them and you evaluate things, you got to figure out what are the like stats on a video game character. Like you ever play Madden? I was really big into Madden back in the day. Like, okay, my quickness is down, my stamina is down, but like my accuracy, like you gotta pump the weakest stats as fast as possible at the time. So
Yeah,
we need to sacrifice some things like, listen, we're probably not going to do as much plyometrics because your energy system is fucking garbage.
who was
You
it?
know?
I think it was Max Holloway who said he learned a lot of his striking from the UFC game. Said he'd play
Yeah.
the game and then go practice the moves, and it's like it makes sense because you see the energy bar too. You're like, shoot, I better start circling out. I gotta
Yeah.
restore. Yeah,
That's actually a cool point. People are sleeping on those UFC games. Those UFC games have a good representation of like human anatomy and the physiology when it goes into fighting. Because now it gives us it gives us a user interface to actually see it, instead of just trying to feel it to figure it out. But yeah, like, so to answer your question, it really depends on the athlete's goals, how they're assessing, and the time frame of their camp, how much you can work with them. Because I've had guys where we don't, like I said, we don't really get much into the plyometrics because they have 3 weeks till his fight and their gas tank is just freaking shit. So we're dedicating most of the time fixing this gas tank, and that could give them a way bigger advantage than just extra explosiveness.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it goes back into what you were saying earlier about what were you saying? You were saying we got to see where we can improve the most. You said something about that, and like I say that a lot, where I always say, work in the direction where you can improve the most, because that's where you're going to get better. You got to address the weaknesses,
Mhm.
address the weak points, and like you said, everybody's different. Some people are more fast twitchy. Some people are not. Some people are able to sustain, and yeah, you definitely hit the mark on all that. I really like what you said.
Yeah, whenever that's what I always tell people. Like when I do my live Q&As, always hit with these generalized questions, and I always ask them like what is the goal? Everything is dependent on the goal. Like your body, the weird thing about human beings is that we're so goddamn adaptive. We can fucking adapt to anything. Like we literally built submarines. Like we can do anything with our bodies. But it always depends on the goal. Your body is going to, like a plant. If you want a plant to grow taller, you put a stick in it. It'll travel up the stick. It doesn't know it's getting taller. It's just adapting to the stress. If you want it to grow wider, you trim the top, it'll go outwards. So you always want to run that through the lens. What is the goal? What is the time frame? Then I can figure out how to apply a solution to it.
That's something that I've noticed in your content is I've noticed this in your podcast is you always ask what's the context, and I really appreciate that because you can't give two athletes the same exact plan and expected to have the same results for both people, and that's the big part of the industry that you see now is where these online programs, they aren't personalized, and you see athletes getting injured a lot, and you see a lot of athletes not performing better, even though they're training harder.
Right. Right. Yeah. And a lot of that is just because this type of perspective on thinking isn't very well refined. Like we're very limited. Well, let me ask you this before I go into a crazy rant, because the more I do podcasts, the more I better understand. Did you guys have any other questions you wanted me to answer for you guys? Because if you want some free sauce, man, now's the time.
Well, okay, here's a big question that Brett and I talk about this extensively.
Sure.
How insane is it, like asinine, that people say that the traditional stuff worked for all time? Why would we deviate? If the like Brett said this on Friday, he goes, the iPhone, we started out with the iPhone 3GS and now we have an iPhone 15.
Right.
How could you possibly say that 30, 40 years ago, even 5 years ago, applies to like what we should be doing today, or if 5 years ago had the answer of today?
Yeah. Okay. So here's where I've really been actually. So I'm kind of hip to the whole like Chat GPT therapist movement that's really popular that everyone's kind of like doing, but no one wants to talk about because it's embarrassing. So I've really been working with my chat therapist on this because I'm trying to like find a better way to translate my message that's less combative, and so I don't pull more of my hair, what little hair I have left. So what is real? This is what's really going on the psychological level of human beings is that human beings by nature do not like to push outside the realms of order too much because order means risk. Risk means chaos. Chaos means death. That's how it's been since the Stone Age. But you do have to rely on certain outliers, scouts, or trailblazers who are willing to go find new ideas and new solutions that are by nature going to be rejected at first. This is what I call meta law. There's certain meta that we all operate as human beings that we will never go against. It will always go through this pattern. When we have a new idea or we have an established order, we want to be conservative and preserve the order because it enhances our survival. There's a reason there. I'm really big into human evolution. There's a reason there was like a million years of this subspecies of humans called Homo habilis, where for a million fucking years they couldn't get past they couldn't get past the rock. For a million years, they were just hitting fucking rocks together. Can you imagine that? They couldn't get past it. They couldn't. No fire. No. They could hit things with a rock. You know, awesome. Million years. Do you know how many generations that is? That's fucking thousands of generations. No one's figuring out shit for a fucking million years because they survived off of it. It was good enough. So if it's good enough to survive, we will cling on to that and we call it tradition.
Oh my God, that's
I'm gonna use
that's
that. I'm gonna
great.
use that insult from now on. You just created a new insult for me. You're a homo
Yeah, man.
habilis.
Homo habilis, the handyman, he
You're
couldn't
gonna start
fucking.
replying to comments with all
They couldn't figure out shit, man. They were fucking stuck on the rock, and for a million years they couldn't get past it. And it wasn't until another subspecies started to deviate where now it's like, hey, we can hit two rocks together. Now one rock is sharper than the other. And yeah. So dude, this is deep. This is deep into our meta and how we operate as human beings. So we have these established traditions, or we have these ways, these patterns we like to stick with because they work. Now, if you deviate outside of the pattern, if you go into a new take, you can make a mistake. You can miss the mark. You can miss the survival. You can fuck up and the tiger gets you. Or it doesn't work, whatever. And so that brings things out of order closer to the realms of chaos. Now, these realms, this is where innovation happens. This is where fire came from. Fire is literally the ordering of chaos. Fire is chaos. We hone in on the fire, we reorder it. So this is like deep. I hope you guys are following me, but this is like deep
Oh, yeah.
psychological patterns of human
No,
behavior.
but believe me, this is like the type of stuff we talk about on the daily. Like this
Hell
is,
yeah. Okay,
yeah,
so
yeah, this
and
is
so
good
and so
stuff.
when you have these older models of training, and when you introduce these new ideas, people do not want to reject it because the training is a sacred expression. The only thing you truly own in your whole life is your body, your clothes, your watches, everything, your hair. You are born naked. You're born with this one body. It's the only thing you truly own, unless you're in North Korea. Then the government owns you. Now that's unfortunate. But that means that anything you do with your body, that's why they call it the temple in Abrahamic religion. It's a sacred being. And so people really take this seriously and they're very emotional. It's almost political in a way. And so when you
Mhm.
start to push different ideas, different expressions, you are forcing their thinking to get closer to the realm of chaos. Because now they're in a place of unknown. I don't know if this will work. I'm not sure what's going on. I can't see it yet. And then what happens is that when they can't decipher the chaos, the ego from the prefrontal cortex immediately is going to snap in as a defense mechanism. This is fucking bullshit. I don't understand what you're doing. This tower crunch shit isn't real. Fascial systems for fags. Well, I don't know if I can say that. You might have to edit that out. You know, you get all these different takes, you know. You get all these different takes and these all different pushbacks of trying to push, you know, these different realms of chaos and order. And so, but the monkey who actually would use his eyes, who would see things. This is why the eye is on, you know, the top of the pyramid. You know, it's in the dollar bill. Our number one aspect is our vision. We're the only primate that can actually see camouflage snakes. That's why we have colored vision. The only other animal that has better vision than us is the eagle. You know, is the bird, the hunter of snakes. That's why it's on like our meta. You know, the American flag, the bald eagle. Anyway, it's all kind of like wrapped together. And so what you have to do is you have to start getting the courage and the understanding to push yourself out of your comfort zone, be more open-minded, and to observe. See, this is what turns off the ego and allows you to progress, is what you can see. All science starts with observation, what you can see. And then you take that observation and you start running through the acid test. Let me test this. What are the results are? You know, and then we can start to progress it. And then once we have some established results, it actually worked. You know, BJ Penn won his fight. Troy Polamalu won the Super Bowl. Now it enhanced our survival. Now we're more receptive to take it on. And eventually it will become tradition. But here's where things get kind of interesting, guys, because I know you're very new to this like training style. You've probably been doing it for about maybe a year, maybe a little less. Yeah. Okay.
About a year or two.
Okay, so about a year. So here's something you have to worry about is that there's another cycle. This cycle can happen within nervous system training, where it's going to run through this same meta law, where you have people who are going to think this nervous system training isn't right. This is the way it needs to be done. He's doing it wrong. Where now all of a sudden the nervous system training becomes dogmatic, traditional, and it rejects new. And you'll see this, the more you guys get involved with this community, you'll start coming across this more where people claim, no, this is the way he did it. This is the way Marv Marinovich wanted it done, that he's doing it. But technically, like, there is no right or wrong. There's just differences. Now, your ability to experiment, be open-minded, and to feel the differences determine which one can give me my result best, fastest. So you got to be very careful of this cycle, because the cycle will take place even in realms of innovation.
That makes sense because and that's why I asked you the question about the lactate question, because some people would say that that's not, I've heard that, you know, getting into the lactic zones is not a part of the Marinovich training. But you look at a fighter, like long before I was introduced into this training, I had a base philosophy of periodizing energy system development when it comes to fighters. We'll start with alactic power. We'll spend a few weeks. We'll go to capacity with the alactic zones. We'll go to lactic power, lactic capacity, and you're peaking out with the lactic capacity, keeping an aerobic base throughout the whole camp. And then I started studying into the Marinovich training and learning from certain individuals, and it was like, no, lactic would be wrong because you're not able to give 100%. But I understand the value because I had been doing the lactic training with these fighters, and I had done it myself, and I know how important it is to have a high level of, like, a high lactic threshold.
Yeah. Okay. So here's another thing to think about, because your brain, what these people are doing when they say the Marinovich training system doesn't have that, what they're doing is that they're creating a box to hold a context under, because they're not trying to think about this critically. They're not seeing it past the labels. This is why like language can really confuse us. Now, when Marv Marinovich developed his training system, this isn't Marv Marinovich's system. No one is anyone's system. That's not a fucking thing. This is all an accumulation of every human being in the sports performance industry's work that's been compiled together to figure out what works best for the goal that they want. So Marv did not invent the ball work. He did not invent the balance. That was by Dr. Edith. A lot of the shit Marv did in this training system, he learned from other brilliant guys. and it's been abstracted, and then he's taken bits and pieces of it, and it's like, okay, this is getting us closer to a result, this is working better, this is working better, let's solidify it. And then it goes a step further with the super cat that was introduced by the dunk master. The dunk master back in the 80s, when Marv was, seeking other coaches, Marv was a good learner, and Marv never said like, this system, this is my invention, this is an accumulation of all these different philosophies and breakthroughs that are built together, like Bruce Lee. You take everything, keep what you think is going to work best, throw out things that you don't think are. That's the philosophy behind it. So there's no such thing as Marinovich system or non-Marinovich system. I don't really look at it like that. It's just training. It's just stimulation.
Yeah, I mean that's how I look at it too. But I just say the term because it kind of puts some context as to what we're thinking about.
Right. Yes. It helps people who don't really kind of get the full picture. It gives the context so they can understand where we're going with these goals.
And I mean, a big thing too that I was thinking about, because I was a swimmer my whole life, made it to pretty high levels. And a big thing with lactic training is that because I'm a sprinter, I was a 50-meter specialist. I would go up to the 100 as well, but a big thing that we would do is our lactic threshold within our 50 meters. So we are like, and we also talked about this with Brian, where lactic training doesn't look the same for everybody. Like you said, with a fighter, you would get them in these longer intervals, but for me, my race is 22 seconds to 20 seconds. That's where I really need to be. My nervous system needs to be on point for that amount of time, for that time range. So it's
Mhm.
like, in the end of the day, my conditioning looks completely different than a fighter's conditioning, and so it all breaks down to that context dependent, where like Brian makes his athletes, depending on if they're a football player, where their play is lasting 8 seconds average, 8 to 12 seconds. They have them working in that 12-second range at that 90%, and that counts as lactic, where you're doing 12 seconds on, maybe walking around a little bit. Maybe like for us, we would get a 50 meter off the blocks at 90 to 95%. 100% isn't necessarily realistic within a training cycle, um within a training period where you're doing already a bunch of yards and everything. It's
Yeah.
not realistic to hit a true 100, but you're doing that and then you're getting 2 minutes rest. So I would usually do some breath work, get in the pool, do a little splashing around to get the blood moving, get back up, and then you're exhausted, but you still have that ability to get to that 90-95% because you're building that each time.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one thing. Okay, so the reason why it's kind of like so strange for people to think about specificity. Can I say that word, specificity? I don't know if I'm saying that word, but specific goals compared to like these general broad strokes to training methodology that people are more familiar with, is because all of these protocols and philosophies are designed for 2 coaches for 30 athletes in a college setting.
Yeah.
That's the unfortunate problem, and I actually feel bad for these college coaches. I used to like kind of have like I used to kind of pick sides and go to war with them and fucking go in the comments and roll around the mud with them until when I actually started working with teams and I realized like, oh my god, dude, it's a fucking nightmare trying to train these 30 kids and there's just one of me and I have an hour. So when you under that context, that's 60% of the sports performance industry is that scenario, right? You're gonna, and the higher levels you go, the more it becomes that. Even in the NFL, like you got like 90 guys, you got 3 coaches, and you got an hour and a half. Everyone needs work, so you give them some general ideas. You can't help everyone. There's not enough. Well, there is enough money, but they're not. It's not. They're not in the business of developing. They're in the business of pumping out ticket sales. But this is
Right.
this is why these ideas, where people are saying it's like, well, that there's no protocol that kind of shows that. It's like, well, you're not thinking about like, why would I do a generalized cardio training protocol for a football player that has a completely different goal, demand, and play time than say the soccer player? But that kind of thinking is very new for people because, like Brian McGinty says, it was really interesting to say like this right versus left brain thinking. You know, when you're right brain thinking, you're more into, I believe, I might be screwing this up, but I believe when you're using the right hemisphere, you're more in the realms of conservatism and traditional, maintaining the order. Your left brain thinking is in the realms of more chaos. How do I abstract the order? How can I break away? How can I experiment? And so when people are always right-minded thinking, they're seeing things on Instagram, hey, he's doing it this way, I got to do it that way. That's how I'm going to get results. They're not critically thinking about what my sport is, what the demands are, what's going on with the athlete, because no one teaches them to think that way. We've been right-brained thinking since elementary school.
Right. And I think that's a big thing too, because when I look at a lot of this stuff where you're getting into different positions, you're doing within the moment of the set where you're doing right foot in, right foot out, both feet out, both feet in, stuff like that. And in the context of my sport, I need to basically hold an isometric of the same position the whole time and be really supple during the whole movement. So that's been my main challenge of the of working with the nervous system training is seeing, okay, I don't have to get as creative with my movement. It adds a level of fun to the training,
Yeah.
but in my sport, I need to be really good at a specific position and be really good at that specific pattern. So that's been the funnest part about this training is just is the experimentation and seeing and being able to directly feel the consequence in the water.
Yeah. Yeah. This training allows you to be what we were supposed to be, a sports scientist. We can become scientists again. And we coach people through our science. And right now we've lost sight of that in the industry. We're coaches first, you know, but we're supposed to be scientists first to help them coach them through our scientific modalities. So this
I really like
training,
that.
yeah, that's really what we're supposed to be. But because coaching has become like a turn-based factory through the college system, like somewhere around the 80s, the colleges became more of like a how do we produce more and more degrees instead of how do we kind of push the boundaries of science, you know, somewhere along the lines I lost track of that. Now everyone kind of has like everyone thinks that, you know, they think more about like the coaching aspect. They forgot the fact of experimentation. They totally forgot about, you know, being a scientist and the fundamental characteristics of being a good scientist: observation, experimentation, coming up with hypotheses. You know, all that stuff kind of disappeared from our industry somewhere in the 90s.
And that's the
Yeah.
truth. I mean, I think about it constantly. Like I think about it constantly. The act of movement, especially when it comes to peer review science, it how can a study tell me what I'm feeling, and how can it like that it can't tell what I'm feeling. And so I say this argument a lot to people where I'm just like, okay, but did you feel it? Did you take the time to feel it before you made an opinion and threw out a study?
Right. Right. Yeah, that drives me it drives me crazy all the time. I even made a video kind of explaining because I was learning like the towel crunch system, the phosphor glide system that's been going around. I've been learning it and experimenting with it, and I'm like, wait, why is everyone just doing this in one position? You know, like what if I cross one of my legs? What if I go into hip extension? What if I go into leg abduction? You know, and I started taking screenshots of this, and I used an AI to predict different scientific theories and probable outcomes. You know, based on like using language models and logic. And I have this AI. It has databases on every single scientific principle and study ever created on the internet. So I'll run it through the filter, and I'm doing these modalities, and I'll get an idea like, okay, what is this doing? How is this going to affect? What are the percentages that I'll get significant return on investment? You know, and because if something is working logically, right, like the peak set methodology, you guys are like hip to the peak sets.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, talk
Okay,
about
so
it
like
because I
okay, so like when you're doing like the ball work, right? You're doing like bicep curls or tricep, whatever. You want to end on a fast, explosive repetition. You don't want to hit that point where you're going into like failure,
Right.
okay.
right? So when I was thinking about this, there's this another coach that I work with named Alex Jamora. He coaches Baby Shark. You know, he's a great coach. And he was asking me like, why are we doing peak sets? Like, why that methodology? And I'm like, he's like, is there a study on this? I'm like, no, not really. And then I was thinking about it. I was like, well, if you look at the fundamental principles of speed training, you would never do like say an agility ladder, right? Or quickness training. You would never do a quickness drill to failure. It's been studied that if you end on a peak neurological velocity, that the body is going to adapt to that velocity more and more. The adaptation is going to be more efficient, right? If you go into that failure point, you overshear the tendons, you reinforce fast twitch, you kind of promote the body to break down. It actually will make you slower over time. And so I'm like, okay, we take that one scientific principle, right? We understand about that. Now let's apply that to another scientific principle, you know, a plyometric throw, like on the supercat. It's like, okay, so if this principle works, right, for enhancing explosive speed, and this principle works for enhancing explosive, explosive strength, the plyometrics, you fuse them two together where now you're doing plyometric throws ending on a fast repetition. Why wouldn't it work? Has it been studied? No. But if you just follow the logic, like, fucking come on, like, what? It's not that hard.
Yeah, like I say this too, where you can't look at this training and negate what you're seeing. You can't deny that. Like
Right.
like just the eye test, the simple eye test gives you a lot of what you need to know.
Yeah, like who's moving faster than Brian's athletes? Like, come on, like, what do you mean? Of course there's no scientific study because this guy asked me earlier in the comments. He's like, hey, has there been a scientific study to produce that this actually delivers results? And I'm like, no, because none of us have $250,000 to dedicate to a fucking study. Like, what are you crazy? It's like, yeah, you want it? You want an example? You want a study? It's called the 2004 Super Bowl where Troy Polamalu won. It's called UFC 111 where BJ Penn fucked up Diego Sanchez. Like, there's your results. Like, just look, use your eyes. You know,
Yeah. Well,
like
there's
get out
plenty
of
of,
this dogmatic thinking.
yeah, and well, there's plenty of newer case studies as well.
Sure, yeah. Just look at Brian's guys, or look at Nick Hurst, look at Rafael dos Anjos, look at any athlete that's run through the system, you know, and just like you don't need a study to see reality.
That's the honest truth. That's the honest truth right there. You can't because okay, so the more and more I got into this system and the more and more I would see things on Instagram, see things on YouTube, just try to learn a little bit more about it. You always get into the realm of the Soviets. You always end up it always circles back to those videos. You end up getting into Verkhoshansky's work, and that work is undeniable. That work is undeniable what they were able to do in the Soviet Union and how they were able to develop their athletes because of the amount of, well, I think you've said this before. I don't know where I've heard this. It might have been from one of your podcasts, but in a communist region, they have they're allowed to dedicate whatever they want their resources to. And here in the United States, it's what's popular. And athletic development isn't necessarily popular. It's the attention it gets. So so yeah, that's it's incredible how people really are behind on this stuff.
Well, and also there's a lot of politics when it goes into this, where why would we want to reward a communist system and entrust in a communist system, right? When we've been at Cold War with them since, which technically never ended. Like, we're still at a Cold War with them since like the 1945. You know, like, we're America first, like America, fuck yeah. You know, like we very patriotic. And I even okay, I had a crazy conversation with this lady at a bar where I think she worked for University of Michigan. And I think we were talking, I don't know how we were talking. I think like, anyway, but she was telling me what she does. And I was like, hey, I know about this training methodology that I practice. And I was wondering, like, she's like, oh, do you have any like research on it? Blah, blah, blah. I was like, well, it's based on a lot of studies from the Soviet Union. And she's like, oh, so it's going to be a little bit of a problem. And I'm like, why? And she's like, well, you're not really going to get anyone, you're not gonna really going to get like a United States professor to really take any of those studies seriously. You know, one, because there was a ton of propaganda, there was and there was, the steroids, And number two, it's kind of like fundamentally a conflict of interest, you know? So they want to rely on their studies. And it brought up another example. I made a video about it where this physical therapist was a part of the first study at University of Michigan about off ice training to help on ice performance in hockey. You know,
I remember you telling the story. Please
yeah,
tell it to our audience because it was so funny. It was so funny when I heard you tell this story.
yeah, and so she was telling me like, yeah, that's how I got my MD. We were part of in 2007. We were part of a study that off ice training improved on ice performance, especially for like the hockey combine. They have like own version of a combine, and I was like, wait, like off ice? I was like, this is like, yeah, like medicine ball throws, like skater jumps, like like that kind of stuff. She's like, yeah. I'm like, what year this happened? Like 2007, and I'm like, what? Like University of Michigan? Like my brain couldn't accept it. It's like 9/11. I could not accept what I was hearing. I was like 2007 at University of Michigan, like Dearborn. She's like, no, Ann Arbor. I was like, why? I was like, what the fuck? I was like, why did it take so long? Like the Russians figured this out in the 60s. Like this is like, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Like, of course it's gonna make improvements. And I'm like, how this take so long? And then she broke down like costs, athletes, peer reviews, grant money. A lot of these people have to fucking get approved of grants. And most of the time, if you already have a system that's really good at finding athletes, not developing athletes, the college system is not a development program. It's a recruiting program with their sports. If you have a good system to just cherry pick the very best genetics from all these different states, why would you invest money into more sports performance training? We already got freaks. They're going to be good no matter what, really. We got to invest more into like trans rights or something like that. And so a lot of them don't get that kind of money, to like conduct these sort of experiments or this kind of test. So it takes fucking forever. And
That's
yeah, and I think I calculated her study cost around like $800,000 to
No
produce.
way.
Yeah, because you also got to think about like, and that was like total cost. You got to think about food for the athletes, consumables, and you got to think about the salaries. Who's running the machines? Who's running the motion capture machines? Those are all tech guys. There's
is this where the
repair.
Viper came from?
The Viper?
Yeah. You know what the Viper is?
No, no, no. What is that?
It's like a tube. It's a cylinder, and it has handles on it, and where they learned that from hockey. I think that's where they were studying. They were studying hockey. I read about it in this book. I mean, I had already known about it. This is Fascial Training by Bill Parisi.
Okay. Oh yeah, Parisi Speed School. Yeah, I
Yeah.
seen it. You've seen him mess with those.
Yeah, so the Viper tools, those are pretty interesting. And what they had concluded was that farm boys have better fascia connection because they're moving sub-maximal loads at high frequencies. So their fascia has the ability to they have adaptability in their movement capacity, and their movement vocabulary is a lot bigger.
Hmm.
So because they're moving all these bays of hail and weird shaped objects in directions that you can't that it doesn't happen in the weight room, essentially, they were stronger than the city boys. And so they developed this tube, and they're going sub maximal loads but at high intensities and different directions, omnidirectionally, and the players started getting stronger because of it.
Yeah, yeah. Now I don't know if that study kind of contributed to the development of the Viper. Because I was seeing that where when I was trying to help people understand like because there's a lot of different weird takes on fascial training. Like where you see people that are kind of doing like this sort of stuff and like holding movements, right? Twisting the legs, and it's uh, when you actually if you look at the research on what stimulates like good fascial qualities for sports, like you always need the same principles. You need glide, you need rhythmic movement, you need low load. And so static myofascial holds doesn't give you that. It just helps with more like global awareness. And I was looking at this Viper. I think he can modify it a little bit. If I'm going to be like a little critical of where he's going with this, you know, as far as the tempo of the movements. But I was watching it. I think I might buy one. They look really interesting.
Hey, I like them. I like them. I personally, I use them. I use them at my gym. They have one. They have a 32-kilogram one,
32
and
kilogram. Holy shit.
it's a little bit too heavy. I stick with the 10 kgs, and I like to do really fast rotations. I like to do like spins around my body, but pretty fast as I could go. I like to do those. I like to do these shakes. I got that move from Brett where you're shaking back and forth and you're trying to keep the body shaking while going back and forth.
Right. Yeah.
Stuff like that. And I think it's a good tool. It's a good tool. I wouldn't say it's the best tool in the world, and you can get a lot out of other tools, but it's definitely a good tool to use.
I love I'm a big fan of using different tools. I think uh man, there's just so much value you can get out of these different tools, man. There's so many things. Like, it made me want to get one of those Vipers that you're talking about. I'll have to look into that, maybe get some for my gym. But yeah, like I love like the water training tools. Like I have like a Bulgarian bag, but it's water. And they have like the tidal tanks and the finesse balls and all kinds of stuff like that. I think incorporating, because it's just a new stimulus, man. It's just something new to adapt to give the athlete more abilities.
Yeah. And maybe you can tap into more global layers for a very specific modality. You
Yeah.
know, that's what I mean, and that kind of brings it full circle. Where like if like I do some things where I actually added to the quote unquote nervous system training protocol, where I developed my own thing called reactive strength training, where
Mhm.
it's a series of isometric holds that are done at a very specific time and sequence, but the only points of leverage have proprioceptive elements. Now, I created this because the majority of my clients are older guys, right? They're in their 50s and 60s, and a lot of them have dehydrated fascial systems. The elasticity is really low, they're really stiff. And so if you do something like a single leg hip bridge and you're just using your leg to hold it like up against a stability ball, that leveraging point is proprioceptive. And so it creates all these like micro contractions and stability. So apparently that helps the stability strength develops more neurological strength into the body. It also can hit the tendon tissue, and it creates better reactivity into the muscle. And eventually that actually converts the muscle composition to more elasticity. And so, but no one ever. This was never in the Marinovich training program. But I just took two principles. I was like, okay, stability exercises helps with reactivity. Do the three position hold methodology that Marv came up with. So I'm hitting more of a global joint angle on each position. I fuse the two together. Now I have a new modality. I have a new sequence. And it's working great for these old guys. It's especially for the physical therapy side of things.
Yeah. Yeah, man. That's one thing that really helps when you're working with a lot of people is you can come up with these new things and create your own breakthroughs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's fun. It makes training interesting again. You can push the boundaries, and yeah, that's why I don't like the whole like encasing this as just like this is the way and this is not the way.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with that approach because I'm the same way. Like I love learning from, and it's like you said with the Bruce Lee quote, and absorb what is useful, discard what is not.
Yeah,
And
they quoted it way better.
yeah, it's it's a thing where you got to be your own person, and you gotta see what works best and how you can create your own innovations and it's fun, man. It's really fun. Now, I think there's value in being a specialist and being the man of this system and like sticking true to it, like being the best at it. But I also think you could probably do better for your athletes if you try some new things and don't stick 100% to one specific system potentially.
Yeah, yeah. If Marv never did that, he never would have incorporated the ball work.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
we never would have
Uh,
had the balance pipes.
yeah, yeah, 100%. Like it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's very engaging. You'll see that with your athletes when they start doing this. It's very like, it does. It feels like old kung fu training combined with like Soviet science.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some other tools that you really like that yeah, what are some other tools that you incorporate?
Uh, things. Okay, it's just some things I've been messing around with. So like the water bags I've been messing around with more, trying to come up with new different movements. Um, like the hard surface balancing discs, I'll mess around with those. What else am I doing? I'm trying to come up with a new form of like a pressure release, but I can't figure out a way to do it. And this is a Louis Simmons inspired idea where I don't know if he actually built this out, but he wanted to improve potential energy and combined a ballistic movement with an overcoming isometric. So he had this idea like if you take your fist and you push it into something and then all of a sudden you release it and your fist takes off. Like the faster your limb goes through space at a certain velocity, your nervous system remembers how to access that velocity and can kind of tap into it. And so I've been trying to figure out a way to duplicate that with like everyday equipment, using like resistance bands or like the wall or something like that.
Maybe like a reverse hyper. If you kind of had an attachment that could release, like you're saying, like if you because I have a reverse hyper, so I was trying to think how I could create something like that. Potentially having like a foot strap that maybe you could move to slide out of it, or maybe there's like a button, we get some technology, you press and it just releases that you take off in a sprint or something like that. Like that would be sick.
Yeah, yeah. There's the how I envision it is I would need like a platform, like a padded platform, like where you can push your leg or your arm or something into it, and a hydraulic piston where like as soon as you hit it, it like releases and allows the pressure to express from all that potential energy building up. But I don't know if I'm
I
gonna
like
ever. I don't know if I'm ever created. It's a little too much work for me.
I like that. I like that a lot. That's something that I've used quite a bit, especially with the position training. I like to hold. For example, I'll hold a split squat with my heel up and really trying to press into the floor, press, 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 and have some weight in my hands, good amount of weight, and then drop the weight. And the whole point is that as soon as I drop the weight, to explode up.
Yeah, yeah. You're kind of tapping into that same principle, and that's
Yeah.
yeah. That principle is actually in that samurai anime I was telling you guys about.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
you
really
guys should check
Oh,
it out if you want to explore some weird stuff. You
yeah.
know,
What was the name again?
yeah.
Shiguri Death Frenzy.
Okay, is it on Netflix?
Okay.
No, I don't think it's on Netflix. But you can get it on Amazon or iTunes, or it's out there. It's out there. It's easily accessible.
Okay. What about some books, man? What kind of books do you get into?
Yeah.
Man, since ChatGPT, I don't really read books anymore. It takes so long. Uh, on training or just anything.
Training or
Anything.
anything, yeah. But I
Yeah.
mean, training would be cool, but also business mentality, whatever you have. Could
Well,
could even be some entertainment, entertainment books. You can get a lot of value from those type of books as well.
yeah,
One,
yeah.
one thing I've
So,
noticed about you that I really like is you're able to relate. You seem knowledgeable about history and like you're talking about history and evolution, and I really like bringing in these different bases of knowledge and relating it to the training.
yeah, I'm big into pattern recognition. I try to see patterns in everything and how they correlate to each other. I would say as far as books, so there's two books that I'm actually going to start. But I kind of do this thing where I don't like to read a book. To be totally honest, I prefer to have the audio so I can work on something. Or when I play video games, I like to listen to books. Uh, but this one book called "A Spark in the Machine," which is about this one. I think he's a type of scientist or kinesiologist that's trying to detect if there's an electrical transmission between the fascial layers, if they can kind of keep, so you have like say like your bicep, right, has like a fascial layer, but then there's this like other layer that separates it from the bone, like where the two fascial casings slide across each other. If there's a signal that travels through that, and maybe that's what chi is, chi chakras and stuff like that. So
Right.
there's that which I want to explore. And so people are going to think I'm weird. And I'm about to open up a book called the origins of the Nazi occult and their use of witchcraft to control the material plane. You know,
Okay.
I'm coming kind of really into like weird occult sciences, and to be totally honest, this whole Epstein thing really kind of put me down the rabbit hole, and I've been exploring it. It's been kind of fascinating.
Yeah, that's one I don't think I'll read, to be honest with you.
Have you
No,
ever read Sapiens? Have you ever read or heard the books Sapiens?
I heard of it. I have heard of that.
I've been getting into that one a little bit. That's a pretty interesting book. It talks a lot about the things you were talking about earlier about the evolution and kind of how our problems today, our problems today are very strange in terms of what the human body has adapted for.
Hmm.
So it's a good read, honestly. It's a good read or honestly a good listen to.
Yeah,
Um,
dude. Books on human evolution. I always tell people like it's kind of a weird taboo topic, but the more you research human evolution, the better you understand why life is the way it is. It makes life feel so much simpler. You know, you're like,
yeah.
oh, okay, this is why I like X, Y, and Z, or I react to X, Y, and Z. Like this makes total sense now. You know?
Yeah, it was like the spinal engine for me. The spinal engine really did that.
Oh, man,
Um, yeah, that's a good book. And another one that I like is The Muscles and Meridians by Philip Beach.
I've heard of that one. What's that about?
So Muscles and Meridians, it kind of takes a separate approach from Tom Myers when it comes to the fascia lines. He thinks about it in terms of like resting postures and more in the movement capacity. He says that the fascia lines. He said he talks about it being incomplete, but I off the top of my dome, I don't remember it, but it reminded me a little bit of what you were saying earlier about how you don't necessarily have to move within the lines in order to create that fascial response.
Yeah.
And that's what this guy Philip Beach talks about. He goes more into TCM than Myers does.
Okay.
Which is
All right, man. Far
yeah.
out.
What was that?
I'm just saying it's a far out. Far, I got to check that information out.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
definitely.
we're
That's a good one to read.
talking about studying like evolution. I had no idea what I was getting into when I started reading this book, but it's called How the Mind Works. I think you, based off what you're talking about, you'd probably enjoy that one. How the Mind Works. It's a book on psychology, and it really dives into all the different evolutionary theories in relation to how you process information and how the mind works. Title kind of tells you what it's
Yeah.
about, but it goes into like all the like Darwinian theories and all the other theories that maybe failed and whatnot, but where the different where some of their theories held up, where parts of it held up, where some of it didn't, and how it all relates to the way you process information.
Yeah, definitely.
That's another interesting one.
All right.
Very
Now,
interesting.
well, I have a question for you guys.
Okay.
And this is something because you guys, let me on your podcast. I want to try to give you some value back. Is there one area about your training? Because this is an element that's, people talk about training and training modalities a lot, but one area that I noticed doesn't get talked about enough is training business. Now,
Mm.
you guys both run a training business, right?
Yeah,
Eh,
I do.
Okay.
Yeah,
Like you,
I have a small training business as well. Yeah.
okay. So you guys work with clients and stuff like that.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you guys have any questions or any areas as far as running a good sports performance business that you would need help on? Or that maybe question, anything along those lines? Because these are the areas that I want to kind of help more trainers with because
Sure.
understanding
I have
training
one
is
for
easy, but the business side is pretty hard.
I have one for you. When we're talking about branching out of the local scene and really starting to work with some big names and big individuals and really providing the value that you're worth, you could talk about that a little bit.
Working with like bigger names, like high ticket clients.
Yeah, and like high level athletes for me, like I want to branch out of the local city. Like there's some athletes here that I'm going to start working with, some big names in the city, but you know, obviously the big names are, you know, you may have one or two in your city, but like really trying to get out and work with some of the best.
That's going to be hard. Now, in order to get like these bigger fish, these like more high ticket clients, you need to have, well, the golden rule to anything is how much value you can offer. The more value you can offer, the more people are going to want to work with you or do business with you. And that's part of the reason why my Instagram page got so popular so fast, because I started just giving out secrets, teaching people exactly how to do things with this training system, try to help as much people as possible. Now, in your case, when it comes to working with professional athletes, a lot of it is not what you know, it's who you know. You know, because one, when put yourself in their shoes, you have a lot of money, you have a ton of freaking pressure, you got all these problems, you got parties, you got Lamborghinis, you got hoes, you got all these issues, you know, all these factors you're trying to juggle in your mind, and you're still hyper competitive. Like you need results now, and you really can't afford to make a mistake. So to work with someone who's really unknown, who's not trusted, who's not a part of the network, you know, it's really hard to break into that. And especially there's going to be a lot of gatekeepers you're going to have to overcome. So what's really helped me work with higher level athletes is the value that I offer, say with and there's a bunch of ways to do this, but the value I offer with my social media, you know, it develops people's trust, you know, and they'll work with me even though I'm not really known, you know, in the network of like trainers that work with professional athletes. So you got to find a way to build trust. You know, I would go to these professional athletes or people that they know and offer to help for free. Offer to teach them things, give them free sauce, you know, find different things to, hey, like, you know, just find any way to give them value and do it all for free and ask for nothing in return, and do that for like a year. That's the hard part. Because you know, do it for like a year, and eventually, you know, your opportunity will show up. People will know about you. This is what, you know, Alex Hormozy. Have you guys heard of Alex Hormozy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I read a lot. Actually, I read a lot of those books too. I read all his books. I'm about to read his new one. But Alex
Oh,
Hormozy,
same.
yeah. His magic formula is value creation. How can I create as much value as possible for free? Then everyone wants to like know what I'm doing. People take interest. People will trust me. They will let me into their circles because everyone's trying to take, and take. No one's trying to like give. So the more you
Mhm.
can give, even at your own expense, even if you're not getting paid for it, it's just a dude you're going to have to pay as a trainer. The more value you can offer them, the more they will see that you're a person that actually is trying to help instead of a person that's trying to chase clout or, you know, just trying to make money. You actually you show more genuinity, and everything is a transaction for people. You know, like if I give you something, a lot of the times you feel obligated to give me something back, even if it's never spoken.
For sure.
Mm.
Yeah, one thing
That's something that wait, go ahead, Brett. Go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna say one thing I heard from Hormozy that I really liked was give the knowledge, sell the application.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you give them all. Not like if you go on my Instagram, there's so many people that can watch every single reel and little by little put the whole system together for free. You know, a system that I paid thousands of dollars to learn. You know, there's a lot of guys who pay big money to learn the system, but if you watch, it's all out there for free. You know, but here's the thing: a lot of those guys, they'll call me and be like, "Listen, am I doing this right? Do I need to do it this way?" I'm like, yeah, do it exactly how the video said. Like, oh, okay, thank God. Okay, I'm ready to do it now. They just want some trust. They want you. They want you to guide them through, to reassure them, to give them the confidence. That's what really people are buying. People aren't buying your services. Like if they were buying your services, then everyone would be doing nervous system training, but they're not. You
Mhm.
know, they're buying you. They're buying your trust. You know, they're buying your personality. So that's what's going to be more important than anything you really know. So yeah, that's what I would say as far as working with higher level athletes. Create value, offer value, give value as much as you can, and don't stop. Don't stop until they give you a call back, be like, hey, are you open for like a Monday session, or I'm having some issues with this. They'll eventually start reaching out to you, guaranteed.
I like that. Thank you for that. That's a big thing that I think both Brett and I are struggling with at the moment is building attention and building a larger base through the social media, trying to find that messaging. And it's when you look at your Instagram, for example, it's pure information. Every single post is information, information, information. And it's I like how now there's also like you're showing yourself doing the exercises, you're showing other people doing the exercises, and it's along with the information, it's super valuable, and it just makes you want to tune in, and you're like, okay, I like what he said there, and I'm gonna click on his page. I'm gonna look at a few more things because I just learned something.
Yeah, I want everyone who gets into my Instagram, I want them to walk away better than who they were when before they got there. I want you to walk away with feeling like 1% better. Maybe you learned a little gold nugget here and there. I'm putting out information I wish I had when I was trying to learn this,
Yeah.
you know? And so, and it only took me a year and a half to go from 1800 to 241 with that formula. But you gotta freaking be relentless. You gotta post 2 videos every day, nonstop. You gotta give out information and give out value. And then people like you. And then when people get like when they call you, they feel like they know you, they trust you. They're willing to exchange your services for money. And
100%.
yeah, that's pretty much it. And it's hard to do in the beginning because you want to get paid for your services. But for the high level clients, yeah, that's kind of the route you're going to go. You're going to have to offer a lot of free. Or if you want to go a different route, there's more than one way to skin a cat. The other direction you can go is you can give no value and you grind your freaking ass off and you make your own pros. And then eventually that's how you get into the system. And I've done
Mm.
that with 1 or 2 guys where we've taken them from college to professional or high school to elite level, and maybe they went professional, but that's one of the 2 routes. That's more the route Marv Marinovich went. It's more the route Brian McGinty's going, where he's like, man, instead of trying to ask for all these pros to work with me, I'm just going to make my own pros. I'm just going to make my own badasses. And then once I produced a couple of those, I developed some. Now they're all going to kind of show up at my door, and that's where he's at now. But that takes a lot longer, you know.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely, bro. I think man, I think this has been a great episode.
yeah, it's
Uh
been fun.
dude, lots of
Yeah.
valuable information out there for the people listening. And yeah, man, you want to wrap there, Andrew? You got any closing thoughts you want to go for real quick?
One last thing is we haven't even talked about the feet in this episode. That's crazy.
Oh
That's
yeah,
something that
we got to talk about the feet, man.
we got to talk about the feet. We hadn't even talked about that. We hadn't even gone into it.
Let's just
I
talk about it.
Yeah, I'm somebody who's been thinking about the feet for the past 6 7 years now. Um,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. I don't wear shoes. I wear barefoot shoes, but I try not to wear shoes most of the time. And the biggest thing is I haven't even gotten it's recently in the past 6 7 months where I've been having the biggest breakthroughs with the feet training and truly feeling it. And that's all due to the pipe work.
Hmm.
That's all due to the pipe work. Like even just standing on them and doing calf raises on them, I feel each one of my toes beginning to like my feet were a little different. The display where I had my left foot being really good on the big toe and really bad on the outer toes. The fourth and fifth toe were pretty bad. And then
Yeah.
on my right foot, the outer toes were really good, and then the big toe was pretty weak. So the big toe wasn't pressing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you had a contrast pattern. Did you like injure any of your feet when you were younger?
I broke my right foot, tore my right ACL, and tore my right rotator cuff, all on the right
Okay.
side.
Do you think that compensation happened from the post-surgery atrophy process?
It could have, but I also I think a big part of it was also like the because my right foot is my back foot when I do my start, and my left foot is in front.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I think a big part of it was like the demand that I would place on each side, and how that created a compensation pattern within my body.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's really good development. I would say, man, I don't understand how $20 in PVC plastic has outperformed everything on the foot and ankle fucking fitness tool market. But so many people are sleeping on the feet. It's insane. It's absolutely insane how many people are sleeping on the feet. And I think a lot of this is just because we never see them. They're always fucking hidden. They're always in socks. They're always in shoes. Like we're never seeing the feet. And even trainers, like they're always trying to look at things from the hips down because that's the only thing visible. Like the feet are never visible.
Right.
Let me ask you guys this. When you started doing barefoot training, looking at all these ideas, did you naturally started noticing things like oh by seeing the feet and the legs into the calves into the hips kind of interacting, did you guys start to like look at training a little differently?
I felt a lot more balance. So that was the main thing, is that I never liked working out with shoes, and I've been working out in the gym since I was 8 years old. I never liked working out with shoes. I always felt out of balance with shoes. And then when I started taking off the shoes is when I started feeling the glute a lot more. I had a little bit of a problem feeling the glutes, and as soon as I took off my shoes is when I started feeling the glutes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the feet are absolutely huge. I have kind of like, I don't know if it's an analogy, but I have a paradigm shifter that I try to help people with when they're asking me about the feet. Like, are the feet really that important? Like, dude, they're just feet. And it's like, well, like imagine if we did this to our hands. Like we wore these thick, like rubbery, blocky gloves on our hands, like most of our lives, And when we like if you and when we take them off, we have now our hands are all like weak and like stuck together. We can't open our fingers up really well. Like with that, do you think that's healthy? And we'd be like, no. Like it's like, oh my god, it seemed awful. Like yeah, but we do it to our feet. Like how are our feet any different? They're biomechanically almost the exact same joint structure.
Yeah.
And so much, dude. And when I tell them about that, they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I can kind of see." It's like, yeah, it's evolutionary. We're not supposed to wear shoes. Like shoes is really good when you got to get one army to the other across the border, really fast. Shoes are important for that, or you got driveways. But dude, the differences you feel improving your feet are, I would say, absolutely life changing.
Oh
I've
yeah.
had people just implementing the feet, and here's the thing: I'm not a big thing on like the toe spacers, and some of these other like I call them like little like softer modalities where like they'll kind of like do like calf raises with the ball between it. I've tried working a lot of those tools. I cannot get good results with them. I can get okay results, but not really significant good results quickly. That's why I push hard surface balancing tools. I think hard surface balancing tools is really important because of the amount of leverage and reshaping of the tissue. Because these feet like they've been forced into this position for years and years and years. So in order to get them into a different position, into a different biomechanical structure quickly, you need a lot of hard leverage pressing against the tendons and ligaments and bones. And that's why it works so fast because it's a hard surface tool. It's not a soft surface tool like the Bosu ball or something like that.
Mhm.
And it has to hurt. It usually is going to hurt. It's also another thing that kind of let that a lot of people, when they use these softer tools like the little balls and stuff, and they're picking up marbles. I guess it's going to help. It's going to help with some general mobility, but if you want significant improvements, like you got to force that tissue to shift. And that shifting cells does not feel good.
I think one thing that helps with the feet training is having an understanding, because like to give some context, like I've been working out barefoot in the martial arts gyms, like no shoes on the mat for 6, 7, like long time, years. But it wasn't until I started like reading books like Rolfing or books like Anatomy Trains, and going into these different movement systems and understanding like, you know, biomechanics of the foot ankle. I think that is what makes a bigger difference. Uh, and I like to incorporate stuff like that when you're talking about alignment with anybody, because you can do all the exercises and whatnot too, but if we're not thinking about the gait pattern, I think you're missing out on value.
Oh yeah, you can figure out so much about an athlete by just what's going on with their feet. Like all I got to do is just watch how they're walking, how they're doing some basic speed movements, you know, or whatever. I can, if you really know what you're looking for with the feet, like, you know, like do their feet turn out? Are they lacking dorsiflexion on the outside? So they lead with their big toe. It kind of creates this like walking pattern like this so they don't trip. Are they flat footed? You know, are they high arched? Do their feet slightly supinate? Are they more normal footed? You know, when you work with a bunch of athletes and you start seeing these patterns over and over again, you start realizing that if they have this foot type, they're probably going to have these sort of imbalances almost every time. You know, like high arch people are going to have this, flat footed people are going to have that. You know, and that's a skill. Focusing on studying people's feet. You know, like when you're in MMA, when you have got like some free time, just look at everyone's feet.
Oh yeah, yeah, trust
Yeah,
me.
just watch. Everyone's gonna think you have a foot fetish, but it's all right.
Oh, so I look at everybody's feet now, but I'm in a gym where I work out at an Equinox, so I can't be seeing
Oh
people's
yeah,
feet. I can't be seeing people's feet, but I go in there barefoot. I I just wear I put on my sandals and I'm barefoot there. But a big difference that I've noticed, Brett has flat feet and I have a very high arch. I have a very high arch, and it's been an interesting transition with the barefoot shoes because I've had to learn how to walk correctly in order to not be in pain. So it's like I was like first year or two, it was really like awkward walking because I was thinking about each step. But it's so true is that when you put on these foam pads on your feet, you don't have to think about how you're hitting because no matter how you hit, you have so much protection that you could hit any type of way and it won't hurt. You won't feel it that much.
yeah, yeah. Because because you deaden the nerve endings. You know, like when you go barefoot, all of a sudden those nerve endings can react to something, and like and because it's self correct. You will self correct because it'll hurt. You know, pain is always a good teacher. Well, but
Right.
you so that kind of makes sense. So if Alex, correct?
Andrew.
Andrew, I'm sorry. So Andrew, you have flat feet, but you are also known to be a lot stronger.
Well, no, Brett is the one that has the flat feet.
Oh,
Uh,
Brett is the flat feet.
and he's a little bit
I don't
strong.
have totally flat feet.
Well, it's funny because flat-footed athletes, on average, are stronger athletes.
Yeah, I would, yeah, you definitely have a better arch than I do, that's for sure.
Like my toes, like with my foot, you could fully put your fingers under my feet.
But
Yeah.
Brett, you have the high arches, correct?
No,
No,
no, no, no,
Andrew.
no. Brett's the stronger one, but has the flat
Brett.
feet.
Okay, but Andrew, you got the high arches.
Yeah, I I jump really high. I jump really
Are
high.
you usually do you lack mobility on average? Do you feel a little tighter and stiffer?
No, I have extreme mobility.
Oh, but you're a swimmer though. You've had a
Yeah.
lot of yeah. Okay, so that could counteract this. So usually high arch athletes are a lot stiffer and tighter. Uh,
I would say that
Genetically.
I do have some stiffness, but that comes from being sore, that comes from like the structural integration, like definitely I've had to in during this transition period of switching into the nervous system training, I've had to lower down the intensity and lower down the volume because I was coming from a big weightlifting background and trying to build all that muscle, build all that stuff. So it's like learning to dial down the intensity so that the CNS isn't on overdrive and I'm not constantly in this state of like being tight.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's smart. That's a smart approach. Wow. Interesting stuff, guys.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. It's cool to nerd out about this stuff, you know. There's not many people that even care about that, you know?
Yeah. No, there's the community, like there's the community of us out here. like you guys got to connect with like Linus at Methods of Training, like Fanita Way in Hawaii, SSL Finland. There's a bunch of guys, there's a community of them. I just started talking to this guy named Ram, who is Marinovich's best friend,
Okay.
who's like making these experimental machines. Yeah, man, this is like Dr. Nail or Lanil. Yeah, Dr. Lanil. He was worked with Marv. He just contacted me. He was Ronda Rousey's physical therapist. There's a couple of us out here. A lot of them are a lot older and they're not like hip to social media, but yeah, we need more people. We need more people for the cause.
100%. And I mean, that's collaboration is how things end up growing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man. I appreciate you guys letting me jump on the podcast. It's been a lot of fun.
Hey, we really appreciate you coming on. Like, truth be told, like the honor's ours, man. Like you are, it's a blessing to have you on. It's a blessing to learn from you, and all this information is invaluable to our guests, invaluable to us, and it's going to be a fun journey. It's going to be a fun journey for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we gotta get some more questions in on the next one.
100%, 100%. And one of these days, maybe we hop on your pod. See, maybe we.
Yeah, fuck yeah, anytime.
Yeah.
Like yeah, anytime. We just did an episode. We had a former professional Japanese baseball player who I
Oh,
started
nice.
working with. Yeah, he did. He's been listening to the podcast since we started. He's like, yeah, I don't miss an episode. And I just started working with him. Like, dude, you got to get on, man, and tell us about Japanese baseball. You guys got to listen to it. It is fucking insane what those kids go through. Dude, our kids are soft as hell in this country. Those Japanese kids, dude, they're like samurai. They shave their heads. This one kid died because of the training was too intense.
Oh my
Like, yeah, man. Dude, it was out of control, man. It's like North Korean baseball. It was wild.
We
Wow.
will
I'll definitely check that one out for sure.
yeah, we'll definitely link all that below. We're gonna link it all below, but tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, it's just Instagram, Quintin.Torres36, Quintin with two I's. Yeah, just hop on. If you have any questions, you need any help with anything, or you just want to learn more about the nervous system training, jump on. There's a ton of free advice out there, ton of value. Get yourself started, make your body feel better.
Absolutely. Hey, we appreciate you guys watching. We'll see you next time. Another solid episode. Peace.